And there were so many things you were talking about in the last episode where I'm like, I could ask him like 40 things. All right, we just got to pick one and roll with it. So there's some stuff I want to dig into deeper that we just kind of touch the surface of, and then other things I want to get to entirely new topics. But I also know, like, you know Jordan Peterson. You've been on his show before. I have a little bit of a relationship with him. Yeah. He obviously is like, they publicly announced he's not doing too well right now. Have you heard any updates on that, on his health? I haven't. So what I know is from what's known publicly about his health. Unfortunately, you know, he went through some health battles as is known. But yeah, I sent him my greetings, you know, well wishes through his wife, Tammy, and but yeah, I'm not sure exactly what's happening there. You know, never like to see that. I hope hope he recovers soon. Yeah, definitely, for sure. So this course you did on love. Yeah. We talked about it at the very end last time for the last 13, 14 minutes of that podcast, we did. Which I'm not sure when this one's coming out yet. We'll figure that out. But, you know, we got into some of the pop culture with, you know, breaking down the Titanic and Jack, played by Leo, and how he kind of like courted Rose. So there's some of that I think we could probably rehash just because a lot of people want to know, right? Didn't hear the last episode, and that was also at the very end, so they may not have gotten there. Right. But you mentioned the different things you were teaching across the lectures for love, and you mentioned like sexual energy, transcendent love, parents' love. So maybe we could just go one by one here and break down how Peterson put together each idea to explain it scientifically how love works. Well, it's I have to go back and retrieve some of those files because it's been a week, you know, and I've done so much in that week after in terms of just lecturing and talking about different things. So I definitely have to think. So what did I talk about? So romantic love, there are different stages of romantic love. There's obviously what's called infatuation, and you might call the initial. So when you see a woman for the first time, you see a woman, she walks by you, she's very attractive, she comes towards you and you just find her attractive, right? That's testosterone driven. It's very much in dopamine, ventral striatum of the brain. The ventral striatum is this portion of the brain important for dopamine, creating dopamine. As we know, dopamine is this reward chemical in the brain, makes you agitated, makes you sort of, your heart is beating, boom, 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 all that. So that's initial state, okay? Very testosterone and dopamine driven. Second, what might happen then is romantic love kicks in. You might, you know, build a relationship with that girl. There's something going on that's a little bit deeper now. You start to get to know her and all that. And that is a different circuits in the brain. Now you're dealing with circuits like, if it kind of expands a little bit and it gets a bit deeper, you have things like serotonin dropping in the brain. This is actually counterintuitive because serotonin is this feel-good hormone. Now, when you have serotonin in the system, you kind of feel relaxed. You feel kind of, you know, calm. You feel good. You're very sort of inner driven. So you feel inner driven. You kind of have calmness in you. Now, when it goes down, you become more obsessive. In fact, in monkeys, if you that circuit in the brain going from the medial prefrontal cortex, the mid prefrontal cortex to the basal ganglia and other regions of the brain involved in sort of obsessive thinking, if you cut serotonin in that circuit, you become highly obsessive. So serotonin is very, very important for reducing obsessions. But obviously, when you fall in love, you have a lot of obsessions, so serotonin goes out the window. In fact, the prefrontal cortex, the very front of your brain, the logical, reasoning, you know, planning part of the brain shuts down. So you have that. Second, you have a part of the brain called the TPJ, the temporal parietal junction. We talked about that last time. That is a region up here in this part of the brain. It's involved in creating a sense of a body image. So me, Baland, I feel like I occupy this body. I don't feel like I occupy, you know, Julian's body or Brad Pitt's body, unfortunately, okay? I occupy this body, right? Glad you like my jokes. These jokes sometimes misfire during lectures. Nah, you're good. You're good. You got a bad audience if they're misfiring. Brad Pitt was looking good in F1. Dude, I gotta say, that motherfucker's like 65 or some shit. He was doing all right. He's pretty cool. Hey guys, 3 quick things. Number 1, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. It's a huge, huge help. Number 2, if you'd like to join my Patreon for early uncensored releases of the full episodes, you can join via the link in my description or in the pinned comment below. And number 3, if you'd like to join my clipping community for a chance to make content from the show and make money, you can join via the Discord link in my description below.
So the TPJ creates a sense of a body image. It's up here. And it works by pulling sensory information from various senses, seeing, touch, taste, tactile sensations, and then draws that information and builds a sense of a self. So this is a very key structure to know. It's important in just creating you by pulling information from the world. So you have the TPJ. Now the TPJ, when you are in a romantic situation, it actually shuts down.
Yeah.
And so there's a sense of unison with the lover. You feel like you're becoming one with her. You know, it's very important. It's actually a very critical and key piece of it.
And that doesn't happen at all during the infatuation phase. That's when it gets to the romantic phase.
This is in the romantic phase. In the initial stages, in the pure passionate infatuation stage, it's much more passionate driven. It's much more sexual. You know what I mean? It doesn't have that. These neural circuits are not active in the same manner as we see now. It's clearly different when you actually have that romantic stage.
Is there something specific, like a line in the sand, if you will, that happens or that needs to happen to cross officially from the infatuation stage to the romantic stage?
It's a good question. I think what it is reciprocity. So once you get, okay, so you see the girl, she's good looking, she's pretty, and you have the initial drive, okay? Then there's some reciprocity. Maybe you get to know her a little bit. There's some continuity in time, so you get to see her a few times. That can lead to the more sort of romantic stage now. The prefrontal kicks in. Now, the prefrontal is important because the prefrontal, I said it shuts down, but there's also a prefrontal element in romantic love. Let me explain. So when you first see the girl in the infatuation stage, there's also another structure called the insula. It's up, behind the ears. It's very important, actually. This is the region of the brain that maps all your sensory states. So your breathing, your heart rate, all that is mapped onto the insula. Okay, so it maps all that. And so any given moment, I'm sort of looking at Joey, I'm looking around in the studio, my insula is kind of mapping all that and saying, how is my stomach right now? How's my heart? How does the external world map onto my internal world? That's the insula doing that. And then based on that, it sends signals back to my prefrontal conceptual part of the brain, and then it helps me build a narrative around the world, if that makes sense. Now, when I see a girl for the first time, obviously there's a lot of insula going on. My heart is beating, boom, boom, boom. I'm sweating a little bit. I could measure that if I wanted to using sort of galvanic skin response, skin conductance.
Galvanic?
Yeah, it's called galvanic skin response. So you can measure sweating on the body when it's micro sweating, you know, you can't really. So you have that. So there's clearly a physiological reaction. So you have the insula very active. You have a part of the brain I didn't mention before. It's called the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus. Did we talk about the hypothalamus?
I think we touched it, but it was in another context.
It's another context. It's one of the most fascinating part of the brains. In the brain, it is fascinating because the hypothalamus is this marble-like structure, and it's kind of deeper in the brain. But what it does is it has tons of functions, and it is very small, but it has tons of functions. For example, when I feel aggressive, okay, when I have aggression in me, okay, and I feel aggressive, guess what happens? The hypothalamus is all active, and it sends commands to something called the pituitary, and it then releases hormones. So cortisol, adrenaline is then released eventually from the adrenal glands behind you here, behind your kidneys, above your kidneys. That's the hypothalamus. But it's also involved in sex drive. Curiously, the same part of the brain is involved in sexual motivation and aggression, which begs the question, like, why are some men motivated sexually by aggressive scenarios? Like, why do you have male dominance in prison scenarios and males wanting to dominate others and the sexual component of that, or even rape scenarios, or men just being turned on by highly violent scenarios? Well, it turns out the same part of the brain that processes aggression and processes sexuality It's the same. It's the same. Literally the same structure.
That makes a lot of sense, and like you said, that can be very dark if
It can be
used
very
in
dark.
the wrong ways.
It can be very
In
absolutely.
other ways, though, it creates odd social situations. That's why it's just as tale as old as time. Like whenever there's a woman involved, shit gets weird, right? In the middle.
It does.
And I kind of liken it sometimes to like when you see dogs with a fire hydrant.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like when two tough looking dogs could be walking up towards the hydrant and one of them pisses on it first and the other like can never come back to that hydrant.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a very strange thing, like this competitive thing that happens. Like, you lose out once, you get your balls cut off in a way because the other dog got it.
Right.
Sorry to talk about it this way, but this is how it is. And then doesn't matter, like you go away, you come back, you strike, it doesn't matter. You're kind of like, can't ever go on that street again. You know, it's a strange thing. I think it kind of comes from that same
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting with the insula and how it works and how aggression and sexuality, but it definitely can explain a lot of things. In fact, the insula is also the disgust part of the brain. So when I feel disgusted, you know, let's say you're touching some vomit over there and I watch you, I feel disgusted, for example. So there's a disgust component, and that's the insula. It lights up like Times Square whenever I'm disgusted. But it turns out that the insula is also activated when I experience social disgust. So, for example, if you tell me that these people over there are barbarians, these people are evil, they want to occupy our land, they're just bad, the insula part of the brain also lights up. So it turns out the same part of the brain lights up when I'm socially disgusted and when I'm actually disgusted. And that brings us to a key point of sort of how we dehumanize other people and how wars are generated in the world. Well, it turns out if the same part of the brain is activated with social, like with actual disgust and social disgust, you can see how you become disgusted, literally disgusted by another group of people, by somebody you think is evil and has bad intentions. So the brain is kind of sloppy in ways. It kind of reuses circuits all the time, and the more brain part, like regions in the brain, the more closer the proximity, the more the cross activation and sort of and misfiring, so to speak. So basically, that is a principle in the brain. That's a principle. So there's often this sloppy wiring, and as I said, the closer the better, the more potential for cross activation.
One of the most famous mushrooms in history isn't psychedelic, but it does something really interesting to the brain. The mushroom I'm referring to is called Amanita muscaria, the red one with the white spots that you've seen in Alice in Wonderland and other folklore forever. It's not psilocybin, it's not a traditional psychedelic, although at higher doses, it can be extremely psychoactive and dissociative in its own way. For me though, it's way more grounding. I like lower doses. It puts me in a calm headspace and personally certainly helps me with sleep. Some people even refer to it as nature's wine. This might not be a perfect analogy, but it's pretty close at the same time. For me, if I take a Blue Lotus extract capsule, I find that I get deeper relaxation, reduced anxiety, and even more vivid dreams when I fall asleep. It's almost like your body taking like a deep breath and exhaling right out. And the reason I even felt comfortable trying this is because of Amintara, the company that supplies the best Amanita muscaria around. Obviously, this space is filled with a lot of sketchy companies that are making knockoff products that aren't real, and Amintara is the solution to that problem because they are the total opposite. They've served over 50,000 customers, and their sourcing is clean, lab-tested, and transparent. No synthetic analogs, no mystery blends, no weird research chemicals. They also have the largest selection of Amanita products I've seen. Gummies, capsules, extracts, chocolate bars, Amanita body oil, and their website is loaded with educational guides so that you're not just guessing. If you want to join me and check out Amintara today, you can go to www.amintara.com/go/Julian. That link is in my description below. Once again, that's www.amintara.com/go/Julian using code JD22 for 22% off your order today. Check it out, link in description below. Are there ways to, I don't know, control these types of things and try to stop them from happening? Like if I know, for example, I'm going to fuck up some of the names of the different regions of the brain. You just gave like 10 of them. But if I know that one region of the brain is literally evolutionary wired to make me do X, and I know that ahead of time, is there a way for me to like, I don't know, like try to like program my brain to avoid that and actually be able to avoid the release of the hormones associated with whatever X feeling is?
It's hard, but I think the knowledge of the fact that your brain repurposes itself all the time can be helpful. So just knowing that, for example, you have a wife and then you call her by the ex-wife's name.
Oh, that's a no-no.
That is a no-no, right? But that is an example of how the brain sort of can reuse the same circuitry. Literally, the circuitry that I have from my mother as a child, and we could go into that, is the same circuitry I will use for a romantic partner 20 years later.
So we can go Sigmund Freudian stuff going on.
No, this is attachment theory. It's pretty well known. So this is a very robust finding. So we know that our attachments with our mothers and with our caregivers, that will translate into how we bond with future romantic partners. So this is well known. But on the repurposing and the cross-activation part, there's another really curious observation. So in the brain, right? So by the way, if I'm going too heavy with the technical terms.
This is great, bro. Yeah. Relax. You're good.
Okay, good.
Keep going.
Good. So here, there's a strip called the sensory map. This is a post-central gyrus for the nerds out there. Post-central gyrus. It's a sensory map of the entire body. So just like we have a map for our neurological sense of being anchored in this body, we also have an actual sensory map for our body. So if I was to hit my leg like this and slap it, literally there's a leg portion and there's a thigh portion in my brain.
Right.
On my map here, there's like actually there's a drawing almost, or literally there is a drawing of an actual human body on my sensory map. So if I, vice versa, if I go up here and I stimulate that part of the brain, I would literally feel sensations in my leg. So I can go that way too. So I touch it, it lights up. I stimulate it, I feel it in the leg. Okay? Now, so it's kind of drawn like a human being, but it's kind of disproportional to the actual human size. In other words, you'll find a big tongue. And the tongue is huge, humongous, gigantic. You'll find lips are huge. Okay? Feet are huge. Hands, especially the fingers, are huge. Then Julian might ask, how come? Why do you have certain parts of the sensory map being larger than others? What do you think? Take a guess.
My only guess is that it's tied to like the things you look for in evolution. And here's what I mean by that.
Yeah.
Like if you look at monkeys when they have to attack, they go for the face and the hands so that the hands can't fight back and the face, gets blinded and whatever. And it's because like that's at the top of their thought process of what can disable the enemy.
Yes.
And so I think my guess, very uneducated, but my guess would be that it has something to do with there are things that we subconsciously pay attention to more on people than other things, and we make that maybe larger than life.
Yeah. Well, it's very close. These are the parts that are more sensory rich.
That doesn't sound like I was that close.
No, you're saying these parts are most important. That's what you're saying, right? We use them. They're most important because they're rich in sensory receptors. Think about it. Your lips, right? Extremely sensitive. Your tongue. If I take a needle and prick Julian's tongue, lots of pain, right? Very sensitive. Versus, if I prick your stomach, not very sensitive. So because there's so many neurons devoted for your tongue, that part of the brain is just the map is just the tongue is just huge. In fact, even your genitalia is huge up there. It's very sensory rich.
It's huge in all of our minds.
Now, here's the punchline of all this, okay? The punchline is the following. You will find in that map, even though it's kind of drawn as a human being, the feet are extremely close to the genitalia in that map. And then you might ask, why this disfigurement? What's going on here? Why would you have the feet being close to the genitalia, right?
Big foot,
And the answer seems to be that, have you somebody ever told you, like one of my Ramachandran, we talked about Ramachandran last time. He
Your
told
mentor.
me, yes, my mentor, he told me, you never want to have another man give your wife a foot massage. Specifically, a foot massage is really bad. Now, I obviously wouldn't go for any massage, okay? but I'm saying, foot massage you would definitely not go for. It seems like because of the potential cross-activation between feet and genitalia, because they are so linked in the brain, in that map, that explains why you can actually elicit sensual and erotic emotions by massaging the feet, if that makes sense.
Is that why like people are so into that? That's like one of the biggest
I
fetishes
think so.
online.
I think so. Definitely cross activation in the brain is a major principle, and these two regions of the brain are just neighbors. They are literally like next door to each other, and so you would expect some cross activation when you touch the other. You might feel it in the other part.
You're talking when you say we're looking at the most sensory areas.
Yeah.
In my head, I'm getting a little biased towards like touch and feel.
Yes.
But obviously, the senses are far beyond that, and
Yes.
the most important sense maybe that we have, I don't know if that's correct, but is vision and seeing other people, because my head immediately goes to the first thing I notice in someone is the thing I'm most drawn to is their eyes, particularly with women. If I don't like, you could be the hottest girl of all time.
Yeah.
If I don't have that connection with your eyes, it's never gonna happen.
There's something with the eyes. Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. The vision is important, and it is the most important sensory, organ that we have. This, sensory region. I mean, there's 30 regions in the brain for vision alone. I think in the cortex you have so the brain is 100 billion neurons, and 30 billion is in the cortex. That's the outer layer, has 6 parts, as we talked about last time. And in that sensory region, I think about 1/3 of that whole region is devoted to vision alone. Yeah. It's the sense most important for our survival. So yes, absolutely, it is definitely crucial. But yeah, man, like, so as you were talking about, you have the hypothalamus, the aggression, and the sex part of the brain activate when you have that initial view of that woman. There is the insula is active, so you have that whole body thing. Testosterone is active. Then you ask me the key question: how does it flip over? And I think, as I said, it's reciprocity. Is some kind of I won't say bonding, because that's actually the next step. So if you have step 1 is romantic, it's infatuation. Then you have the romance, and then you have as the third the bonding, attachment. So that comes later. So once
that comes later.
So the initial stage is it's very dopamine driven as well. So there's a lot of dopamine there too. In other words, it's excitement. It's intoxicating. You see her, then she goes away. Is this dance between knowing and unknowing. It's very tantalizing, very titillating all the time. But then you hit the attachment stage, and that's when you have oxytocin and vasopressin. These bonding hormones kick in, and then they create safety around that person. You feel safe around them. You kind of feel like they will stay. They will not leave you. There's security. As we talked about last time, cortisol also goes through the roof during that romantic infatuation stage. That's why you cannot stay there.
Infatuation in particularly, right?
Infatuation and the romance stage, in fact. That 6 to 8 weeks. For some, it's more, maybe 3 months.
So you put a timer on it too.
Yeah, that you can't go forever. So I might say 8 weeks. That part of so it's interesting that infatuation stage. That romantic stage, right? So let's call the first one attraction. Attraction stage. Attraction versus romantic obsession versus bonding. These are the 3 stages. Okay. Now, in the romance, the heightened romance state, that is about 8 weeks, maybe max 6 months. You would run out. Your brain literally, if I was to scan Julian in this romantic state and look at your brain, your dopaminergic neurons would look like somebody on crack cocaine. Literally, you would have a sense of, your brain would be hypersensitized to dopamine, and that also causes what's called globalization. So you go about in life and you see a dog and you find, oh, it's so cute. And you look at a flower and it's, wow, it's so beautiful. And the sunset and the whole world is in fact beautiful. And that's because when we fall in love, we don't only fall in love with that person, we fall in love with the world, in fact. And the whole world becomes poetic when we do fall in love. And that is what it is. And
the timeline is what's interesting to me. Well, let me start with this question. How would you define love if you had to define it? And you can take as much time as you want to think about that.
So I would define love as, it would depend on the kind of attachment there is, right? So, or the kind of experience you have. So the love between my mother and father, the love that I have for them, the maternal and paternal love, is different. Interestingly, you have many of the same structures being activated. So you do have, when I, for example, have bonding with my mother, you do have some of the same regions, like the prefrontal might shut down a little bit. It's more kind of in the oxytocin bonding. So oxytocin gives you bonding and feeling of good, if that makes sense. But the key difference between romantic love and between love of a mother and paternal love, maternal love, is that hypothalamus region of the brain, that sexuality part that turns on. It dials up when you have romance.
But you do, to go into this for a second, you do form patterns in how you were nurtured with your mom and what you look for in a woman in many cases.
100%, yeah. So this goes back to what's called attachment theory.
Yes.
And this is the idea that, this goes back to some experiments that were done a very long time ago. And what they showed were, so you had like a kid, you put a kid in a room, in a laboratory, and the kid is there with the mom. There's a stranger in the laboratory too. Then you observe how that kid first interacts with the stranger when the mom is there. That's the first step. Will the kid be clingy to the mom and just hold on to mom, or would it literally go over to the stranger and play around? There's some toys in that room as well. That's the first observation. Next, the mom will leave. So mom leaves as the next step. And then you observe the kid. Does it cry? Does it feel, so let's say in some cases it may feel safe. It may just maybe be a little bit sad, but then after a few minutes it kind of feels okay. It goes and plays with the stranger. It might explore the territory, even though it kind of feels a little bit abandoned, but it's okay. It feels okay overall. Then what happens is the mom comes back. How does the child react? Does it hug mom? Does it reject mom? What's the reaction? Now, depending on on the child's reaction in all of these scenarios, that will show what kind of attachment you have and what kind of attachment you will have later on in life. So a securely attached person, when mom leaves, first of all, they're not very clingy with mom when mom is there. And then when mom leaves, they will play around, have fun with the stranger a little bit, be very broadly explore the space. Then when mom comes back, they may feel a little bit sad, but then they feel okay and forgives her and continues and move on. This is the securely attached. But then you have people that are insecurely attached, for example. So when mom is there, they're very clingy. They cling to mom all the time. They want to hold her and no one want to go out to that stranger. And then when mom leaves, they cry. They ignore the stranger. They just stay in their place. And then when mom comes back, they feel resentment towards mom. They don't want to forgive mom. And they just feel like, mom abandoned them.
How do both of those people translate later into how they form their romantic relationships?
I'll get there. There's a third one which is really interesting. This is okay. This is the distant. This is the kind of the ambiguously attached. Like this is not ambiguous. This is the one you'd call these are the avoidant people. These are the avoidant. Look, these are very interesting. When mom is there, they're very kind of cold, detached from mom. They're not really hugging mom much. When she leaves, they don't show any reaction. They don't show any kind of, sadness about her leaving. When she comes back, they're kind of, duh. By the way, they don't play with the stranger when mom is away. They kind of just sit there. This is a very interesting type, avoidant. Now to your question, how does it translate into actual relationships later on? Literally, that pattern will play out in how you bond with others. So if I have a romantic partner and I'm this securely attached, I will feel okay with her once in a while leaving, right? I don't need to, when she go on vacation, I don't panic. I don't become my heart won't become all agitated. My physiology won't just go all over the, place. I can feel calm. I can soothe my nervous system. In fact, these experiments have been shown even with physiological measures. So you measure the body, the heart rate, sweating, and you literally see how the brain activates physiologically. And for the insecure children, you'll have all these physiological reactions: heartbeat, noradrenaline, adrenaline. It's just all over the roof. Everything goes through the roof. Now, in romantic scenarios, securely attached people will be fine with the lover going on vacation. They can soothe themselves, tell themselves, oh, it's okay. She's merely just left for a little, vacation. They can soothe themselves. When she comes back, they may feel a little bit annoyed if she didn't warn them or something that she was leaving, but they can forgive easily, right? And then you can see the insecure, how that kid would react. That kid would be when very, very clingy, and then when she leaves, they become all agitated and just all sort of, they can't control themselves, and then when she comes back, they feel angry at the lover. Is the pattern clear? I hope I'm not.
It does. No, it's perfectly clear. I'm curious because those are polar opposites, right?
Polar
there.
opposite. Yeah.
So on the first one, who's not clingy and is secure.
Yeah.
There was a loving. I'm trying to figure out where the mom's responsibility of just how they handle love comes in here.
Yes.
Like there was a loving relationship with the mom, but there was an ability for, in the environment early on, from being an infant on, the mom was able to set some boundaries with like how much they were completely attached at the hip, if you will.
Yes.
In scenario 2, the mom maybe was literally attached at the hip to the kid to the point that the kid developed in a way that when that's not the case, they don't even know what to do with themselves.
It's true. And I have a family member. I don't want to mention them because, in the case it's they might see this, for example, right? So, but I do know somebody from my family, the way she interacts with her kids, she's making them clingy, she's just giving them so much love, but it doesn't allow them to sort of explore the world. The love is just too much. It's too much. It's like, you have to be with me all the time. I have to take care of you. And it comes from a good place, right? It's love. But I feel like those kids, whenever they go out to the world, they just can't be without mom. You have to let children go.
You can't helicopter.
Yeah, you have to let children go out and explore the world and be independent. You can't give them too much love, even though you love them, right? You do want to put brakes on that a little bit so your children become independent.
Absolutely. It's just interesting how the nurturing aspect is how you later form the romantic aspect, but with the romantic aspect, you're adding the next layer of the hypothalamus gets involved.
Yes.
And there's a sexual element to it, obviously, which is perfectly how it's supposed to be. Right. It's just evolution right there. But it's the part that keeps sticking out to me is the way that you put a time length on where you go from phase to phase. And I don't know, it's definitely more anecdotal how I'm thinking about it, because I'm thinking about like the 3 times in my life that I've been in love and they didn't follow a time phase at all. One time was like, a 3-week kind of shotgun somewhere else in the world, total head over heels kind of thing that probably happened in like 3 days.
Yes.
Falling in love. Another one took probably about 3 weeks or so to get there. Another one took more like months, so they followed different patterns. But I'd love to get your thoughts on this when it comes to romantic love. I've always had 2 definitions for how love works, and there's actually a different form on the way that I phrase each one. Yeah. One is strictly the word love. Yeah. And love is like a feeling that kind of gets under your skin and gets into your nervous system. You cannot explain it, but it's when you see, in my case, seeing a woman where out of nowhere, there's that little thing where time stops. Yeah. You connect with her in a way that you cannot possibly explain, and you don't really know this person well. Maybe you've talked to them a few times, but you don't know them that well. But you have this moment in this context, in this place, in this time, wherever it may be, where when you are looking at them, you're seeing a piece of your soul in them, and you realize that you would get in front of a train and lay down your life for this woman, no questions asked, but you cannot explain why. Yes. The second layer that happens is being in love. Yes. And there you have to, in my opinion, there's really two things that have to happen. The first one definitely has to happen. The second thing usually has to happen. The first one is you have to have gotten to know that person. Now, this could happen over a day or two where you're just sitting there talking like there's no clock on the wall and understanding every single person's about every single thing about this person's life and them understanding every part about your life, and just that magnetic chemistry is there. I've been there. That's a great feeling.
Yeah.
It could also take weeks and, going on multiple dates or seeing them in different contexts and, slowly building yourself to these conversations.
Yeah.
The second part is there usually has to be something physical.
Of course.
Exchanged in a way. I don't mean to say exchanged like a trade, but you know what I mean? Like there's a sexual element to it. Like once you cross that Rubicon and like you have sex with a woman, there's a connection there, and there is at least from what I've seen, there's usually a stronger connection from the woman to the male at the get-go, but there is definitely still a connection in most cases, unless you're like having late night fucking drunk sex or something, from the male to the female as well, if it's someone that you do care about and you have that infatuation stage.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's anything scientific to back up my anecdotal experience there and how I define those two words? Two phrases, words, one of them's a word, the other one's a phrase?
Julian, it's a beautiful definition, and I think I like your definition. What I think is that as scientists, we often try to pinpoint various brain regions. We say this part of the brain lights up, this shuts down, this becomes titillated, this becomes tantalized. Truth is, as Richard Feynman said, the physicist, it doesn't hurt the mystery to know a little about it. So knowing about love and knowing about the brain parts that light up and shut down and all that is great, and the chemistry of the hormones and all that. But you mentioned something that really struck me. In Meet Joe Black, have you seen that coffee shop scene? It's a very famous scene when he says, lightning might strike. He's talking about meeting the one, and then he says, Brad Pitt's character, he says, lightning might strike. And I think we can spend centuries, decades exploring the neuroscience of love. But when Shakespeare said, "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease has all too short a date. Sometimes too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed." I think that captures much more than we can capture in brain scans. What Shakespeare is saying here, he's saying, in short, your love is much more beautiful than a summer's day. It's much more temperate. A summer's day has a short lease. Its complexion might be the sun might be too shiny, okay? And he's using all these vivid metaphors to capture what love is all about, that I think we could never capture using neuroscience and brain. So I think
Billy Shakes was the truth.
He was the truth. And I think there's something there. I think there's something there about love, about when lightning strikes, that we cannot capture in words.
There's a line that always stuck with me. It was a Sicilian saying that they put in The Godfather when Michael sees Apollonia for the first time.
Yes.
And one of his guards says to him, he's been struck by the thunderbolt.
Yeah.
And you see, I mean, it's perfectly shown on screen, just like the two staring at each other, and she's not really sure what to think yet, but you know what he's thinking. And I, the irony is obviously there's no such thing as a thunderbolt, but it's like this unexplained phenomenon where you hear it and you know what it means, even if it doesn't exist, and it's just a thing. And I've definitely experienced that before, where you are in a situation where you don't. That's the thing. I've experienced that at least 4 times before. Yeah. And you never expect it to happen. That's the magic of it. You're never like, oh, this is how it's going to go, or like this is going to unfold right now. You're like, what? And what the fuck just happened to me?
Absolutely. It is like lightning striking you, and as a poetic person myself, somebody who loves poetry, so and having a poetic view and a spiritual view of the world, I literally cannot say other than it seems like a divine thing when you do meet somebody and there's that connection, and then when you get to know them and it kind of just, there's a harmony there and there's a sense of like, souls connecting. Definitely that's something special that science cannot capture, but I do think poetry can sometimes tap into and give you a feel for what it feels like, that experiential, that personal sense of having that connection.
Oh, I agree completely.
Yeah.
Is there science to back the idea that some such thing as a soulmate exists? Like people actually do have some, I always like the Wedding Crashers definition of this, a counterpoint of their soul in another person that exists on the planet.
Yeah. It's a good question. I kind of believe in that there are people out there that are divinely ordained to be ours, and that just, their souls is sort of souls connecting, but obviously that's outside parameters of science. Mm-hmm. From a scientific perspective, we have what is called a positive delusion. So when you do fall in love, you need to have that feeling that she's the only one in the whole world that can she's the only one, in other words, like that Apollonia and like Michael Corleone, right, in Sicilia. That feeling must be there of that she's the only one, and that is the prefrontal shutting down and the TPJ shutting down, so you kind of feel one with her. And the dopamine centers are, because they're so hyperactive, they can create delusions. We know that when serotonin goes down, when this chemical of calmness and all that goes down, and eventually dopamine goes up, especially with dopamine going up to the prefrontal cortex, that's when delusions can occur. Like in OCD, for example, you have the exact same pattern. OCD kind of looks like romantic love, like that obsessional component, right? Obsession about the girl. Has she texted me? You go check the messages. Has she texted and you keep checking, and so that's kind of like the OCD scenario. And in OCD, you have tons of delusions too. The whole world is contaminated. Everything is dangerous.
It's fascinating. That's on like the same wavelength.
Same wavelength, right? So, but definitely dopamine and delusions are a key component of that positive delusion of that she's the only one. But it has to be there. You have to have that positive delusion. Yeah. That's important. You need it for romantic bonding, and for romantic love.
All right, real fast. I just got to use the bathroom, but I want to stay on this. This is really good. We'll be right back.
All right.
All right, we're back. So how do you... Attraction's obviously a key part of forming love or getting to that point and
100%.
Whatever, but you also see the fact that male and female brains work entirely differently. They have different phases as well. Yeah. And so attraction isn't like just this vacuum all the time where you have it and then it's just there and that's what it is. You can go through hot and cold periods where it's like you like someone and then out of nowhere you can't explain why, but you hate them, and then eventually you like them again, then maybe you love them, but then you really hate them. I'm not even talking about like when you're in a relationship, just in general with friendships as well that could later become something like that. How do we scientifically maybe start with females? How does it happen to where females can go so hot and cold on liking you 1 minute and not being about you the next minute?
Hot and cold is interesting. Did we talk about emotional contrast last time?
No.
Emotional contrast is an interesting one. So I wasn't aware of this previously, but I kind of I had to study this and learn about this. It's fascinating. So we as men are taught that we have to be kind of cool and laid back and not really give ourselves to a woman, not show our emotions perhaps, and just kind of be laid back and all that. And it turns out there's a powerful concept with emotional contrast where if you can be extremely hot, like very hot by hot, I mean extremely warm at one point in time, so you kind of reveal your emotions and you kind of let the person know that you're really into her, but then you're cold the next push-pull. Yeah. That titillates the dopaminergic centers, like, drives them crazy. Obviously, you don't want to do this. You don't want to do this where you play games, but it teaches us that if you are vulnerable and let somebody know how you feel and they don't reciprocate that, by going away, that can be one of the most attractive things ever to drive attraction. Because
attraction grows in space.
it grows in space, but it grows specifically when the dopaminergic neurons have something to anchor onto, to tether onto. So if you give them literally some warmth, some kind of clear signals of interest, and then go away and allow for the space, that's when really something happens. Versus like playing it cool all the time. So I think that is an interesting, part of how dopamine works. I think that how does attraction work? I think attraction works on a lot of things. There's a lot of when it comes to attraction, there are various components. There's the innate attraction females, for example, have for males and how males look. This is something innate they can't help. So broad shoulders, big breast for some extent, extended musculature, upper breast, and upper chest, I should say, and a little bit of masculine traits could help. So women have this. They have this innate inclination toward masculine traits that signal testosterone, right?
Yeah, we have it too in the other direction.
We have it in the other direction.
Hourglass,
estrogen, yeah. Hourglass. We have a specific interest in a figure that's called 0.70. That's the Playboy figure. That's males will consistently rate that figure as most attractive. In fact, they will rate that 0.70 female figure as, women who have this figure as more intelligent, as more healthy, as better, more moral. In every category is just better. So good.
We'll put that up on the screen so people can see.
It turns out good and beauty is mediated in the same part of the brain called the orbitofrontal cortex. So that's why you see a Disney character like Belle. She's beautiful and she's good, right? There's tons of these examples. Jasmine is beautiful and good. And Scar in Lion King, he's evil and he has a big scar and he's got kind of skinny compared to Mufasa and Simba and all those. So there's that component, and they good cartoonists will exploit that. Absolutely. But yeah, that's the orbitofrontal cortex, and so for males, obviously big breasts, clear skin. Clear skin is a signal of good health for females. So if a female has clear skin, that is a indicator of good health. Parasite infection is probably less in such women. Think about in savannah days, right? So if she has clear skin, she was probably not infected by parasites in the womb. She had a better immune system probably, right? So these are all indicators of health and fertility. Yes. In fact, my mentor Ramachandran has a paper. It's called "Why Gentlemen Prefer Blondes." Okay. Now this paper, he meant it as a satire, but he said to me, and he's said that publicly, that there's about 10% chance of it being true. But the argument is that male will prefer females that have very fair skin and are blondes because you can detect parasites and health easily on a skin that's fair. Like a more fair skin, a more white skin. And also signs of blushing. For example, if she was to engage in infertility, cheat on you, you would know easily. She would blush, and it would be more visible on the skin. Now, since Ramachandran has said since that is probably not all true, but there could be some truth to that. I mean, I don't personally know if it's always true. In my case, I actually have probably more attracted to more brown skin. That's kind of how I. But
yeah, I'm thinking of bias in my head right now. I like Mediterranean women.
Yeah, Italian,
out there, but
Greek.
Their skin is very often incredible, and you can tell it's incredible.
Yes.
Maybe I'm biased, but they have the best skin in the world.
Yes.
But what Ramachandran's talking about is that you can tell. I think what he's saying is, in that theory, you can see contrast more. You can see contrast more, absolutely. To be able to identify a weakness. But also, I don't know, maybe I'm trying to picture that in my head right now. It's hard for me to... Yeah. I guess it would depend on the tint or something, but
I agree. I think basically what I agree with in that theory is that men prefer clear skin. clear skin. That's what we prefer, and that's a signal, an indicator of health and fertility. And so I think that is correct. And yeah, man, I think overall, so you might ask, how come Julian then prefers a woman with Mediterranean? How come I prefer a brown?
I don't know. That's like the last 6-7 years. I didn't used to like have a type. Yeah. I could tell you I damn well didn't have a type in college. You can get it. But you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know.
Something happened there.
Something happened there. So there's a theory to explain all this. So there's one theory where, so me personally, BALAND, when I grew up in Copenhagen, in the ghetto in Copenhagen, I was exposed to a lot of white women.
He was a gangster, by the way. People didn't hear the last episode. BALAND was wielding that knife around.
No.
He kept that thing on him.
Definitely, so what I was exposed to was white women, and I think I had a little bit of that remnants of liking more. And this is talking about like a 7-year-old kid, right? But finding girls with more brown hair attractive, but obviously more of a Danish European, right? The blondes didn't turn me on in that way. And blue eyes is just probably genetically was a little bit too far from my taste. But then I find over the years it kind of shifted more towards from Danish to more brown to more, and then more brown with each gradient, like with each time. And we can talk about how that occurs in the brain, what's going on.
Let's do that.
So first of all, did we talk about the triangle and the square last time?
No.
So I sometimes mix these things up, Julian. I don't know where I talk about what. I don't want to repeat myself, obviously, but so
we really haven't done anything in this episode that we talked about last time. You're doing
wonderful.
Great. So keep going.
I appreciate it, brother. So you show a rat a triangle, okay? Actually, you show a rat a rectangular figure versus a square. This is the rat, okay? Rectangular, square, okay? And each time you show the rat the rectangular square, you give it a piece of cheese. Now, guess what happens when you just show the rectangular versus the square? Which will it prefer, the rectangular or the square?
The one that you get the cheese on.
Rectangular.
Yeah.
Now, here's the kicker. Now you show a more rectangular shape than the original rectangular shape that the rat was exposed to. So you have the original rectangular shape that the rat saw that was paired with the cheese, and then a different, even more rectangular,
a longer one,
an elongated one. Which one will the rat prefer?
The elongated one.
Correct. The question is why. It makes no comment. It doesn't make sense. Why would it prefer a longer one? Why would it go for a mutated version?
Because it's a bigger and better version of the thing that was already given them.
Absolutely. It has learned a rule, rectangularity, because the square and the rectangular, what differentiated between the two was the more rectangularity, the better. So it has learned a rule. That is the essence of the difference between rectangular and square. It has learned a rule. Now, that gets to things like why caricatures are so damn, we like them so much. Okay? You look at a picture of Nixon, or let's say Donald Trump. He's still president, right? I should be careful. Let's say you show them a picture of BALAND, but you take the eyebrows and you amplify them. You take the nose even more pointy, okay? The face even more like, you create something that's even more BALAND than BALAND himself. This is what a caricature is about.
Yeah.
Just like that rectangular shape, right?
Like when the guys draw the cartoons, yeah.
This is called a supernormal stimulus. It's more the essence of me than actually me. And the brains become titillated by this, okay? Now let's take this to attraction. When we initially find somebody attractive, there's a learning going on. So I see that girl, she's very pretty. I'm 8-year-old BALAND. I see that girl. Well, I go, my God, my heart is pumping. Noradrenaline in the system. Testosterone, maybe a little bit, even though I'm a kid. But I have dopamine. I have all those things. Now, when I see her, my brain creates a template for her. I go, my God, she is beautiful. She's gorgeous. She is just the perfect, girl I want to play with in school, right? I want to play with her in school. It's wonderful. Now, my brain creates a circuitry around that girl. All the features, the hair color, the skin, all gets burned into the circuitry. Then I play with her for maybe a year. Time goes by. I see another girl. Now I'm 13, 14. And lo and behold, I'm attracted to her even more than the one 4 or 5 years ago.
And now you're 13, 14, so little BALAND's attracted to her too.
I see what you're saying. There's a sexual component, obviously. Definitely. This testosterone goes through the roof at this point. But my point is in this next, why do you become attracted to the next girl? And here the point is that your brain says, or one theory suggests that we take the initial features of that girl. Let's say she had a certain shape of a nose, certain lips, and they tend to be amplified in the next person. She is even more that girl than the girl herself. She has those amplified features, and you go for that. So there's a development of the attraction. It takes a development where you take those features and they're amplified in the next person, becoming a supernormal stimulus, just like that rectangular shape. It's more rectangular than the original one. Does it make sense?
Yeah, so like when Kanye married Bianca, she had a bigger rack than Kim K, but she looked just like Kim K.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have the original features, but they're amplified. So this is one idea for how attraction then evolves. And definitely there is strong learning and plasticity component. So when you fall in love, there's two neurotransmitters that are crucial for plasticity. By plasticity, I mean the brain's ability to change its shape. So your brain is made up of different modules and structures, and these structures can change their shape so they can reorganize. And the way they do that is by having two neurochemicals. One is dopamine, sense of reward. So I see that girl, I find her attractive, I find her interesting. You have tons of dopamine. That's the first principle for plasticity. And then I have acetylcholine, which is my attention system. This is based on a structure called the nucleus basalis in the midbrain, about 20,000 cells. They have neurons that release this attention chemical, so I pay attention to her as well. So I have dopamine, I have attention, and I have the attention as well, attentive focus on that woman. When I have this, I have tons of plasticity. By the way, when we are kids, we find ourselves in something called the critical period. The critical period is the fact that the brain is hyperplastic until like age 12 or 13. That's why when you learn a new language after 13, like me, BALAND learning English, it'll be kind of like English, but Joey can tell it's not really, like there's something off with his English, right? It's not completely
There's
fluent.
nothing off with your,
my
with
English.
your English.
But it's not totally like, you could hear it, right? Especially when, like,
I mean, you have a small accent. That's about it.
Right, but når jeg snakker dansk for eksempel, lad mit dansk komme fuldstændig flydende. Jeg har ingen problemer med at snakke dansk.
I don't know what the fuck you just said.
Okay? When I speak Danish, it's completely, I don't have any issues. Even if I'm sleep deprived, tired, I speak it like with no issues.
Right.
But English, I have to put a bit of an extra effort because it's not my first language. It's not my mother tongue. In fact, did you know that that first mother tongue is structured and processed in a different part of the brain versus languages we learn after 13? And
that doesn't surprise me at all.
But that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
That this is harder. Like when you are sleep deprived, you are tired and so forth, you literally, have a harder time with in my case, English. It just becomes a little bit more clumsy. It just becomes a little bit more.
Do you dream in English now?
It's an interesting question. I've thought about this. I don't pay attention to it. That's why I can't, because
You gotta get some subtitles on your dreams.
Yeah.
See what's happening.
You know what's going on, Julian? I think is that because dreams are all about the right hemisphere and the right hemisphere is mute. So the right hemisphere has no idea of language. The left hemisphere, you have a structure called the Wernicke's that's involved in understanding language. And Broca's area is involved in production of language. And there's a fiber called the acute fasciculus for the nerds out there that want to know that combines the two. Now, these are in the left hemisphere, and the left hemisphere has all the language potential, all the language abilities. Right is mute. Let me give you an example. So if I was to communicate solely with your right hemisphere and show the right hemisphere the word run, right? I'll show you run. You know what it will do? It would literally start running. Okay, you'll start running when you see that word. And imagine now, this is a split brain patient, so the left and the right brain are completely separated. The left and the brain cannot communicate. So there's that caveat. So you can actually sever the bridge between the two hemispheres, the two sides of the brain. So the left and the right operate separately now. Just want to add that caveat. So you have that, and then you flash the word run to the right hemisphere over here. The person start running. Then you stop them and say, Julian, why are you running? And they will say, oh, doctor, I felt like I'm too out of shape. I need to get in shape. I need to build some muscle. I need to, do some more exercise and work out. They will not say that they saw the word run on the screen because they don't have access to language. They have no ideas about it. The left hemisphere, when it speaks, it's just completely has no access to that. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Yes. So that's an example of that.
Is this also where maybe I'm relating a wrong idea here, but you, in our last conversation, you had been saying we can't totally understand the relationship between time and space in the brain because things aren't, like you can't say that every synapse is measured by a certain amount of time. Some you can, some you can't. So when you're trying to relate the left and right brain as well and what one distinguishes and then the action another one then takes, is it the kind of situation where it's different brain to brain, but the patterns are similar, so time and space is a little weird, but we understand like the direction it goes? Does that make sense?
It makes sense. So definitely the right and left hemisphere process the world differently. You decode social expressions, faces, for example. I'm decoding what is Julian thinking right now. How is his facial features? By the way, there's a structure in the decoding facial features is much faster than visual recognition, meaning there's a part of the brain involved in visual recognition, face processing. We talked about that last time. It's called the fusiform face area. Literally understanding faces and processing them and knowing this is Julian, this is Joey, okay? This is Melissa, for example. Now, there's a separate pathway going from the visual cortex. So when I see Julian's face, it goes from the optic nerve and then it jumps over the face recognition area to the emotional part initially. So in a split second, I know Julian is angry right now. Julian is happy right now. Julian is a threat right now. He might kill me. He's
right.
Right? He has, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
My point is...
You better watch your step.
My point is, even before visually recognizing somebody, you will know their emotional expression. And women are particularly good at this, I can tell you. So, they're very good at this.
Yeah, they got us sized up on that.
So this is very interesting that you have the separate pathway, and it just shows us that we are wired for survival, and knowing whether this person over here on the savannah is a friend or a foe is much more important than knowing who it is, in fact. Going back to your original question, what was your original question? I think we kind of went off a tangent here.
Which one?
I think we were on attraction, talking about attraction, right?
Right. So I was talking about, so you're going way back. What I had asked you was, why does attraction get hot and cold? Why does it flip between like being so into someone and then being completely disgusted by that person? It works in directions of both genders. I started by asking you about why females may be like that, but us males are like that too. It just might be a different
And then we pivoted to
pattern.
Language, and then we pivoted to plasticity, and then all that. Yeah, I think going back to the original attraction question and the rat, and yes, this is how attraction works in the brain. I think there's that component to it of definitely. There's a huge prefrontal component to attraction as well.
Just like pull the chair in a little bit.
Yeah.
I want you comfortable. Just like pull the chair in and sit like that. That's cool. Sorry, I'm just lining you up on your mark here. There we go.
That's good.
I cut you off, but we gotta get the mics.
Gotcha.
That's good.
There's a huge prefrontal component to it. Have you seen Coming to America?
Of course, Eddie Murphy.
Yes. Okay. It's here in New Jersey, wasn't it? It was like there's a New Jersey.
They filmed it in New York, and then they had wasn't there
Queens, I think. Bit? It's like Queens. That's where
a little bit that might have gone over to Jersey.
There's something going on there.
Yeah.
Now there's a scene in that movie where the prince's servant Semi, okay, when they arrived in that and they work in that McDowell, that fake McDonald's restaurant, and they're obviously into the girls that work there. The two boys, Eddie Murphy's character, the prince, and his servant, Semi. Now, Semi is interested in Lisa's sister, Patricia.
Yep.
He wants her. He wants to pursue her. But she is not into him at all. At all. Okay, she's not attracted to him whatsoever. But eventually, as things progress, Semi tells, Patricia that he's actually a prince. He's lying. He's the prince's servant, but he tells her that he's the prince. And there's a complete shift in her attraction to him. She's suddenly find him attractive. He's, now he's the man and all that. And my point is, in attraction, even though you have the initial, parameters of attraction, you find he has the right features. He looks good. He looks like the boy on the playground when you're a kid and all that. But then there's a cognitive social hierarchy component. Oh, this is a prince. Oh, this is a multi-billionaire. Oh, this is a this is a that. And so there is that cognitive component in prefrontal processing, in the prefrontal cortex, saying, oh my God, this is an attractive person.
I think what you're also getting at with a bigger pattern is when people fall in love with the idea of somebody.
Yes.
And this is something both genders fall into the trap of this. It's like, a guy may tell himself he's in love with a girl because she's good looking, she's from a good family, nice enough, offers to help out when you take her to other places, which makes you look great, has a great smile, has a pretty good job, smart, and you're kind of like going down the checklist like, oh, this is all awesome. And you tell yourself, sex might be great, but you tell yourself, oh, I love this girl.
Yes.
Because you're also thinking about, well, what is my family going to think of them? What are my friends going to think of them? Is this the kind of person that like they're going to brag to their friends and family about? Yes. And then you get to a point where you can't explain it, but you realize, wow, why do I not feel like that spark? Yeah. And it's because you've been checking these boxes. And like, again, you also see the same thing happen with women towards men. They're like, oh, he's good looking. He has a good job. He's funny. My dad likes him, whatever. And then, they wonder why it's not there. So the hierarchy thing is more, I guess the question I'm looking for here is when you're looking at like hierarchies or checking a box with people, is that more of like a trap in the brain to where you believe that the different functions of the brain that require love are firing only to later learn that they never were at all? Or do you actually get your brain to fire in those ways to later then kind of come back to earth and be like, wait a minute, I never really felt that way?
It's an interesting question. So there's something, what you're talking about is known as the halo effect, exact thing that you find like whatever you see as beautiful, you give them positive traits. Oh, she's dependable. Oh, she's nurturing. Oh, she's a potential good wife potential. Oh, she's a good mother as well, potentially. So you have all this trickles down. Now, the question is then, how does it work? I think there's a gender specificity to it. So it's gender specific and it's also person specific. So let's start with gender specificity first. Females are more context dependent in their love and attraction. So men, it's much more visual. Oh, she fits the category of she's beautiful, she is attractive, she has all these features, she's probably nurturing, and she may show signs of also being nurturing and being highly, she's beautiful. The short thing is we are very visually driven, much more than the conceptual parts of her being nurturing and a good mother, although we take that into account as well. Okay. Now, on that note, female on the other hand, are much more driven by context. So there's the initial attraction, but then the context comes in. Is this guy good potential? Can he make money? Is he driven? Is he ambitious? Does he have social status? How does he fit in the social hierarchy and attention structure? So females have something called the attention structure. So you, for example, would be high in the attention structure with all your videos and all that people pay attention to. But it's actually one of the things that females find very attractive is because in nature, we only pay attention to important stuff. So being high in the attention structure is attractive. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. And it's also funny that like, I'm way more attracted to the women that don't give a fuck about any of that.
You are. But for them, it's different, though.
Yes.
For them, it's different. And the point here is that female have these wired in because for them, childbearing 9 months and then having to raise this child is a very heavy process.
What?
It's a very heavy duty. it is a very costly.
Raised a child. Sorry, you said raised a child.
Yeah, raise a
I
child.
thought you said erased a child. I was like, wait a minute.
No, erase. No.
Okay.
Raising a child and all that is a very costly process. Is a very costly thing, and so you need a man that can provide and take care and be strong as well. Females like strong men. We talked about the bodyguard effect last time. They like men who can calm, composed, strong, can protect her. All these will help her with her pregnancy and then help raise the child in secure environment. So there is that difference between males and females. And then there's the personal aspect. So I, for example, have heard, many have told me, like mentors Ramachandran, for example, he would often say, oh, this girl over here, she's perfect for you, Jalal. He used to call me Jalal. For some reason, he just kind of
last name. Yeah.
He grabbed onto that. In his culture, you always call people by their last name. His name is not even Ramachandran. It's Vilayanur, but they call it Ramachandran. So they use the last name. Now,
Jalal is a fun name to say. Baland's fun too, but like Jalal is like, it's got a little ring to it.
It got a little bit of ring to it.
A little music in the
A little bit
voice.
musical, yeah. So my point was, he would find some lady in his laboratory that was maybe, she fit the boxes of somebody, a scientist, kind of same area, very driven and motivated and then attractive at the same time. And you'd say, Jalal, this is for you. Let's do something here. And I was like, no. Even if she was pretty and she was, just me personally, I may I may go to some country. I may go to Turkey. I may go to Iraq, my home country, the Kurdish region of Iraq, and I may see a girl just walking about like Apollonia, and I would rather have her much more. Mm-hmm. Like the girl that you see in lightning strikes versus the one who fits all the boxes. I don't give a damn about how educated she is, how much money she has, her heritage. In fact, I don't even like women who use their body too much to display their beauty. This is something I do not like.
I agree.
There is a study, research shows clearly that there's two kinds of mating strategies for men. So, and for females too, by the way, it goes vice versa. If we look at faces initially when we see somebody and we kind of zoom in on that, that's a sign of a long-term mate, that we're interested in long-term mating. If we look at the body, that's a sign of lust and short-term mating. And so for the women out there, and the women that I find that in later years, I find that especially as you know, as you do more and you do lectures and you go around, females sometimes will come at you. This is something that happens to men, and they throw at themselves at you with their bodies, thinking that they can use their bodies, use their, showing their breasts, showing their bodies, and that will make you like them. I'm saying if you're female and you do that, you are titillating these short-term mating circuits in the brain of a male. It's not the right thing to do. It's not the right thing if you want a man to fall in love with you and really be into you, the person. Personally, I like women with some sense of graceful modesty, a sense of elegance, carrying herself with self-dignity, not taking, her body is sacred. It's, you know what I mean? Like, it's not something that should just be thrown at men left and right. But I see that. In fact, I don't know if it's just me, but when I was younger and in high school and things like that, women were different. Maybe it's the times. They were more elegant. They were more sort of, you fell in love with their, you would potentially fall in love with their personality, their beauty. Apollonia, you see her face. And you can make sense of her body. It's not like her body is invisible, but it's just not all over. I just don't feel that.
I think it's what social media has done to people.
Yeah.
And I've seen it happen in both directions too. I don't think in any way men are innocent of these charges in any way either. It's just, it's a competitive nature. Mm-hmm. It's getting on trends and, she's dressing like that. Okay. I'll address something like that too, even if you don't realize you're doing it.
Right.
It certainly happens.
It does.
So I see what you're saying, and I also completely agree. Whenever I'm thinking of like a girl I'm attracted to, the first thing I'm thinking about is her face. It's the first thing that pops in. I don't go like, oh, well, what's the size of her ass?
Yeah.
That may come second, but
Yeah.
it's like you are thinking about the most important part, which is how I connect with you on a personal level.
The soul, right? The eyes, as the poets
Yes.
and the
Windows to the
mystics
soul.
was the windows to the soul, right? It's where it all happens. And so that is and I think women just get it wrong. Just like we men get it wrong and think we have to be bad boys, we have to be macho, we have to, women like males that are hard and strong and cold
But they can smell when you're not in your own skin trying to do that.
They can smell that, and it's simply not true. They do not like this. In fact, studies show that females and males for long-term mating prefer men that are kind, and vice versa. This is for both genders. Kindness, sincerity, generosity, charitable.
This is a couple things there, though.
Yeah.
First of all, you just said for long-term.
For long-term
right?
mating, yeah.
And secondly, when you say they're preferring, is this based on what they're being polled at? Like when you ask them what they
surveys,
prefer?
what they prefer in male, what kind of traits. And this is...
So, all right, I'm going to push back on this a little bit.
Yeah.
I think that first of all, I think there's a balance. In two worlds, you have on one end of the spectrum, all of the characteristics that you just named. On the other end of the spectrum, you would have like what Andrew Tate says, like, you're going to fuck everything, fuck them, which is just like, I think that's crazy too.
Yeah.
But there's a balance here
Yes.
that I think women want, even if they don't say it.
Yeah.
If you are absolutely all those things at all time, caring, nurturing, whatever, you can eventually kind of become
safe. Friend zone.
But in the wrong ways.
Yes.
I think part of being safe is also being something that in some small ways they always have to chase with you a little bit. What that doesn't mean is that you should try to set up systems or become something different to try to match that box of what that is. I think you have to absolutely be yourself.
Yes.
And if there are some weaknesses in attraction that exist with you being yourself, you have to live with that and make up for that in other ways.
That's true.
But when you're saying like women want all those things in a long-term partner, yes, they want aspects of that. But if you were all those kind of like almost more caring female characteristics 100% of the time, it'll get old for them. For most women, it does.
I 100% agree. So when I say they prefer generosity and kindness and all that as long-term traits, that doesn't mean that you buy her like cars and roses and you're kind of totally into her in that sense. It means that you have those traits overall in you, that you have kindness, you have empathy, you have these traits. A great example would be in two characters, in fact. Have you seen Beauty and the Beast?
Of course.
You have Gaston on the one hand, okay, big neck, very masculine, muscles. He eats a dozen eggs a day. You've seen that? Mm-hmm. And he's just a complete narcissist. So he has the dark triad traits that some people on social media might have. So he's Machiavellian, psychopathic, and narcissistic. So he has.
That's what Nadine was talking about when she was here.
So we can go into those traits, but these are traits that women find attractive when they are teenagers and more for short-term mating. These are the Gaston. These are the ultra-masculine red pill psychos. Okay. Now, the Beast. What is the Beast all about? When Belle goes to the castle and meets the Beast, initially the Beast is a beast. He terrifies her. He's scary. She doesn't like her. But over time, Belle learns to like him. He's kind of clumsy, like the way he eats, and when they get to know each other, he's kind of messy. But he's human. There's something there that female like about clumsy men too. In the coffee scene, meet Joe Black. Joe Black is also kind of clumsy. Kind of the coffee kind of spills over a little bit, and he's kind of a little bit. There's something endearing about that too. By the way. Now, so he has that, but the Beast has capacity, even though he likes Belle. First of all, he's not completely clingy. He lets her go, in fact. He says, go to your dad. The dad is being harassed by Gaston and his men. So he says, go to your dad. You are no longer a prisoner. She was held as a prisoner, by the way, Belle, in the castle of the Beast. He says, go to your dad. Oh, you are no longer my prisoner. You're free. What trait does he signify there? That's an example of not being clingy. Learning that love is sacrifice.
Yes.
That love is all about loving somebody, but understanding that you love them for who they are, but you want them to be happy. That's what love is all about. Not you being possessive. It's not a possessive, narcissistic love. For Gaston, it's all about a trophy. Belle is the trophy. I have another trophy on the wall. I have all my pictures of Gaston, but then I have Belle, the most beautiful girl in the village, as the next trophy. The Beast, on the other hand, is all about, I love her and I want her to be happy. Let her go. That's the first trait. Second, Belle goes out into the forest and the wolves attack Belle. There's that attack of wolves, and the Beast he has this magic mirror so he can see what she's doing, and he sees that she's being attacked by these wolves, and he comes and protects her and sacrifices himself. In fact, he's almost dead. He's being eaten by these wolves, but he protects her and saves her. That's the bodyguard effect. Strength, masculinity. All right. Then they go back to the castle, and Belle is able to take care of him. That's another feature of romantic love. When the women take care of a man and he's sick, that's the maternal instinct, you see? Attachment comes in. Now that's not a sexual thing. That's more attachment. That is oxytocin, these bonding hormones that we have, a mother with a child has, for example. That kicks in now, and she starts bonding with the Beast. So there's all these features of the Beast having strength, sacrificing love. And then at the very end, Belle learns to love this Beast that was so rude and held her as a prisoner.
And why did she do that?
She does that because he gradually reveals his character. He's a character that is strong, but he lets her go. He lets her go because he knows that is the right thing for her happiness. Love is all about sacrifice. Have you seen that scene in Titanic where Jack says to Rose, there's only so many boats on the Titanic. And then he says to Rose, you go. I will take another boat. Even though he knows there is no other boat. You take this boat. You go. And she kind of goes on that boat, and the boat goes down, and Jack is kind of looking at her, and she looks at Jack, and the boat goes down, and Jack knows for that moment, he knows he will never see Rose again. And there's a sadness in his eyes. He's trying to hold back his tears, but there's a sadness in his eyes. And then Rose looks at him and looks at him and looks at him, jumps back on the bloody ship. That's what love is all about. It
was until that cold-hearted bitch wouldn't let him on the fucking plank. There was a lot of room on that thing. Yeah, absolutely. There was a lot of room on that.
There was enough room.
There was enough room for two people there, and she let him die.
100%. No, I can.
I'll never get over that.
I'll take that. But you see what I mean, right? You see that insanity of that action of that woman is what love is. It's insanity in that moment that she's ready to die with the man that she just had that poetic encounter with. How do you explain that scientifically? You tell me, Julian, because I have no idea. The fact
You're looking at me?
It's crazy.
I'm from New Jersey.
Right.
It's like, right, explain it scientifically. Yeah, there's a lot going on there. The Beauty and the Beast example is an amazing example,
It is.
Because you talk about love is sacrifice 100%. And this is where I love when philosophy and science kind of get like a little intertwined and you can't tell which is which at some point. But like love is sacrifice, great, 100%. Then Belle gets into danger.
Yes.
And a biologically, in this case, superior male is able to physically come in and protect and save her. Keyword being save there, because I think people misinterpret this a lot.
They do.
With the gender dynamics. It is a common trap for a man to think a woman wants to be saved, and they don't just mean physically, like go protect her if like she got in trouble or something like that, but they think like you gotta pull her in and kind of show her the way and save her in this world that's so scary. The reality is that's actually usually the opposite of what they want. What they want is physical protection, and to know that's there, that's evolutionary. But in many ways, women like to see men as some sort of like, from a mental perspective, some sort of like problem that they can help fix a little bit. Like they actually want to come in and save you. So it's like you exchange the physical saving protection for the mental and like kind of spiritual saving and protection that they want. But men will often think that they need to do both for women, and one is something that repels them completely, because it's like they're very often, not in every case, this is across the masses and percentages here, very often they're more like, no, I can take care of my own mind. Like I'm good. You don't need to come in and tell me how to think, or or that everything's going to be okay all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I definitely know what you mean, and there is that component to it. I think that's very true. Could we take a little break?
Oh, hell yeah.
Sorry,
we'll be
in
right
the middle
back.
of the conversation, I feel my bladder's just expanding.
Yeah, it's perfect. We'll be right back.
Great.
All right, we're back. We had started this whole loop talking about the phases of love. So infatuation, romantic, and then bonding. Was that the third one?
Yeah. And by the way, they don't have to come in right that order. So you can have, you can have bonding first, romantic, and then the infatuation. So it doesn't have to be. It depends. It can be culturally dependent, but it often is. That's like literally. It often is you first seeing her, and then having that romantic infatuation, and then having the bonding. But it doesn't have to be that way.
All right, so maybe a good way to go through this example would be one we started to talk about last time you and I were talking, which is the Titanic example with Jack and Rose, which you were just mentioning a few minutes ago.
Yep.
But like, can you walk me through how, like in the movie, how each phase worked and like when it crossed from one to the other? That might be helpful for people to be able to understand.
100%. So I haven't watched the movie in a long time, but I've watched a lot of clips for my course, right? So Jack is on a ship, and he sees Rose. The first time he sees her, she's up there, and she's on the other deck, on the top deck, and he's down there, and he sees her, and he's struck by lightning. That's the lightning striking.
Yeah.
So that's the first aspect. Then
that's infatuation.
That's infatuation. That's the infatuation state. That's attraction. Then you have, afterwards, she's trying to kill herself, in fact. So she's fed up with all the high class stuff, her rich husband, and that life, that high class life. She feels it's constraining her, making her feel, she doesn't feel good about that. And so she wants to now kill herself. Goes out on the ship, on the edge of the ship, and wants to jump down out. Jack comes out and says, you can't jump. The water's too cold. It's going to kill you. It's like freezing. And he's able to. What he does actually is an interesting trick, Julian. What he does is she's all limbic driven. So the emotional core of the brain, the fear part of the brain, the amygdala, is hyperactive in her wanting to jump out of the ship and kill herself. What he does is actually a very clever trick. So I'm not sure if James Cameron thought of this, but what Jack does, he starts saying, well, do you know I'm from Milwaukee or something, this and that. And he starts talking about like cognitive stuff.
Yes.
Activating her prefrontal cortex. So now her prefrontal cortex comes online, and then he goes, oh, by the way, the water is freezing cold as well, and starts to talk about like prefrontal stuff. And we know that when the prefrontal cortex is highly active, it will often dampen the activity of the amygdala and the fear centers. These two centers tend to not be active at the same time. They're very antagonistic. That's why in depression, for example, you see people with depression, you will have a literal activation of the emotional core of the brain, the amygdala, the ACC, and fear departments being activated in a temporal way that it precedes the prefrontal. So there is that, and Jack really very clever. He taps into that, and he's able to get her off, put her in a prefrontal state of being.
Emotional override of the logical.
Of the logical part of the brain. So we have that, and then that is a source for bonding. He becomes the beast that saves Belle from the wolves. This is literally the same scenario, just her jumping down. He's much more of a verbal guy. He's not the muscle guy, Leonardo DiCaprio in that movie. And so this is his way of saving her. Next, what he does, he takes this lady and takes her on a journey. Rose, basically. And what way does he do that? The way he does that is by saying, look, this is your life. Your life is trapped. You feel you are trapped. You're being told 24 hours what to do. You have to eat this food. You have to dress this way. You have to obey this man. You know, this is your life. And she's feels imprisoned. And so what Jack does is that he provides an alternative reality for her that's intoxicating. It's an escape from her world. It's very dopaminergic driven. And we know love, obviously, you have a lot of dopamine. And so he's able to give her that. And women actually, I feel like, I don't even feel that, but there's women do like that when men can take a woman and take her on a ride in life. Yeah. It's like when a father takes her child, when I take my child and I play with my child, lift my child and throw her around and lift her and put her here and do all these crazy games with her that are kind of a little bit aggressive, but the child loves it. The little girl loves it. I think women unconsciously want that from a man as well. Mm-hmm. A man that can take her for a ride on a magic carpet, just like Aladdin and Jasmine. Yes. Take her out of the palace, take her out of her world and show her a whole new world. Adventure. And I think, so women love that, and that's what Jack is doing. That's what Aladdin is doing with Jasmine as well. And so he does that, and she falls in love with that. That she goes back to being a teenager again, to having that ride. And then they bond, obviously, and there's some bonding going on, and attachment as well, although it's over a course of a few days. But there's some bonding going on. And then eventually, now at some point in the movie, not going into too many details, Rose leaves him. She says, no, I cannot go into your world. I cannot continue to be with you. And he goes out on the deck. That we talked about that last time. Yep. And then she later regrets.
But he also, and you laid this out last time, he felt the emotion, he sat in it, but he was able to detach and not let it own him.
Again, he was the beast, like the beast scenario. He let her go knowing that I want what is best for her.
Yes.
And when she leaves, I will stay in a masculine, calm composure. I will not let the emotional part of the brain overwhelm my prefrontal cortex. So I become destabilized.
Yeah.
And I think that's key for what a woman wants in a man. The emotions have to be there. Like he looks devastated on that out on the front deck and all that. He looks devastated. You can see he's kind of looking out with his eyes like squirted, and he looks out and he's not happy. You can tell his heart is broken. But then when Rose comes out and says, I've changed my mind. And then he says, shh. And then they do that classical scene when they look out and I'm a king of the world and all that, that kind of I'm flying Jack and all that. Point is that's part of it. Eventually then obviously sinks, the ship sinks and all that happens and there's another scene I have to say in that movie before we conclude this movie. On that little thing on the, what do you call that? When they're drowning at the very end.
Oh, on the board.
On the board there. Do you notice at some, like he's down there, he's dying, right? He's actually dead at this point. Actually before he dies, he says to Rose, promise me that you will go on, that you will live and you will have children and be happy and all that, right? He says,
will go on.
All that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
When the boats come back for her,
Jack, there's a boat.
Exactly. But you notice that she's ready to give up. But the only thing keeping her from giving up is the fact that the promise she gave to Jack, and she then continues. It's a intense love story, but I think it captures what love is all about, what's happening in the brain, the positive delusion.
Positive delusion.
Yeah, this is the only person in the world that can be the one, and this is really these regions of the brain turning on and off in this pattern.
Yeah, it is kind of a perfect story, the way they did that and crafted that. That's why it's such a
beautifully
genius movie.
Cinematically as well, and the ship and everything. Yeah.
Now, what about the attraction, though, physically, that happens with sex? And the reason I ask this is because obviously when you have sex, well, at least from the male perspective, this isn't always the case for females. It's harder for them with full orgasm and everything. But with men, like, sex is great. That said, even with us, like, it can eventually get stale. And then that is tied sometimes scientifically to us losing attraction for a woman. Like, okay, this is kind of the same thing over and over again, where we allow it to then override all the other things that might be great in the attraction that's happening with the woman outside of the bedroom. But what is it in the brain that can kind of cause that to wear away, to where maybe it just gets stale and then you're unwilling to think that that will change at some point?
Do you mean the habituation where you become like, if it's repetitive, is that what you're saying? So the dopaminergic system, and this is known as the Coolidge effect. If you have, like you have a hamster or a rat or something, you know, it will engage in sexual intercourse with other hamsters until a certain point. But then at some point, it will just stop. It will become desensitized. The dopaminergic neurons will stop firing. And this is, you have your, did you know that dopamine in the brain is we have a set amount at any given time. So I can only be happy at so much happy in a given week. And then eventually I have to go down to baseline and beneath baseline in order to have dopamine recharge. So I can't be having intercourse 24 hours. I mean, the hamster would not be able to. But then if you introduce a new hamster into that cage, it will start doing the sexual act again. This is the Coolidge effect. Eventually, the same dopaminergic stimulus or stimuli, if there are multiple hamsters, will desensitize the dopaminergic system. And if you provided novelty, then you will have potential attraction again. But let me tell you here, there's actually in that hamster or in a rat, right? When it's engaging in these acts, there's a circuit going from in the amygdala, right? That core fear center of the brain. It actually has many subcomponents. So if you go into the nitty-gritty of neuroscience and really look at it, there's subcomponents. And there's a part of it called the bed nucleus of the stria terminalis.
Nucleus of the stria terminalis.
Bed nucleus of the stria terminalis.
Bed nucleus.
Yeah. That part of the brain, there's a circuitry going to the hypothalamus. And you know the hypothalamus too well now, right? Yeah. That circuit, if you sever it in these rats, guess what happens? It will stop mating altogether. Regardless. Like you provided tons of new hamsters, it will just stop mating.
It takes away the impulse for
it takes away you have cut the sexual circuit in the brain. You have removed sexuality by severing the circuit in the amygdala to the hypothalamus, the bed nucleus of the stria terminalis to the hypothalamus. That is the sex circuit. And if you stimulate that part of the brain, even though the dopaminergic system is dying off, it will keep engaging in the act. So literally, we have a sex circuit in rat that could perhaps also exist in humans. It's very interesting. It's very interesting we have this.
Absolutely.
But the Coolidge effects really is what explains it, that if males are sexually engaged with a woman, they will eventually desensitize dopaminergic.
Well, that's why you also got to mix it up too. You know, like if you start to make, you know, the way that you physically show love to be just kind of like a routine.
Yes.
Or sure, I don't know how we'll get to that point, but it does for people.
Yes.
Then it's like a cascading effect to the rest of the attraction. It just kills it.
100%. So yeah, that when I'm saying that dopaminergic neurons will die off, by that I mean not that, you know, that you will start not being attracted to your wife. It just means novelty. Yeah. It means that you have to detach sometimes and so forth. Meaning you don't, have some abstinence might help for certain amounts of time, could recharge the dopaminergic circuits. But yeah, I think novelty is really is the key for that. But yeah, man, the whole attraction, love stuff is interesting. I also covered transcendent love. I'm not sure if you're interested in that.
Transcendent love.
Yeah, love of God and spirituality. I think that was a key part of it, and so of what I was talking about, and so it's a completely different type of love. Now, it's interesting with the romantic love, though. There's also a transcendent quality to it. Almost, it has a spiritual soul component. But then when you're dealing with love of God and love of spirituality, that's a completely different realm. And so yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah, and what makes it, I mean, it's obvious that it's a different thing, but
Yes.
I guess like scientifically, what's so different about the way we express that love spiritually?
Spiritual love. I'm gonna put up my jacket. I kind of feel a little bit chilly now.
Yeah, yeah, we keep it icy in here. Yeah, it's a little trick of the trade. You don't want people hot in the chair because they get sleepy and they're not as good.
Right.
So I like it cold rather than hot. Got a high air conditioning bill around here.
You're doing hot cold on me, huh?
Yeah,
Emotional contrast.
that's right. That's actually, you're on to me.
All right.
It was actually inspired by some people smarter than me who understand the way the human brain works when they're talking.
Awesome. So, no, I think transcendent love is interesting. It taps into consciousness and what consciousness is all about and where it all comes about. If you look at the brain, there's a part we talked about before called the limbic structure of the brain. Mm-hmm. Now, in the limbic brain, if you use a helmet called the God helmet and you stimulate that helmet, you will literally feel divine beings. You will have angels. You will see angels. You will feel have all kinds of spiritual experiences. This is Michael Persinger's helmet in the 1990s. Very interesting work.
You see angels.
People report seeing angels.
What about like demons?
They might as well. So it depends on your state and how you feel. If you have, in the temporal lobes, if you have epileptic seizures, meaning the neurons in the limbic structure go ballistic, they fire in a high rate, and you have a seizure in that part of the brain, you can develop what's called temporal lobe epilepsy or temporal lobe personality. This is interesting. So imagine this, just a part of the brain, this is a regular part of meat, tissue in the brain, it becomes hyperactivated, and suddenly what happens is that you will become a spiritual person. You will see I'm in communication with God. You become spiritual. You will start writing poetry. You focus solely on religious stuff, and you have all these spiritual qualities emerging from you, merely from these brain circuits going awry. So I think that's fascinating that can happen, and it shows us where spiritual tendencies might arise in the brain. It seems to be in that limbic circuit, in that limbic structure.
Is there something, I don't want to get like way too meta here, but when it comes to like the spiritual realm with things and how we may experience love or seeing things like you just described, whether it be angels or demons, I had started to talk with you last time about this, but we kind of got off it. Like, is there something connected to our consciousness with that? Meaning we are filling in the gaps of why we are even who we are by trying to create something larger than life or outside the known realm to explain it?
Yeah. So in terms of having something outside our skulls, this is really difficult to answer. Is this true? Is there something outside our skulls? Is there spiritual connection? Something out there, communicating with us. I think that is true as a spiritual, religious person. Yes, I do think it's true, and it could very well be the truth. We talked about the radio analogy last time. If you have a radio, you play with it, and the voice goes away, but really you don't know that this radio wave's coming. Right, similar to consciousness. So I think that is all true. But I think really in terms of consciousness about and self can get, let's talk about self a little bit and what self is, because then we can get deeper into consciousness and spirituality. But let's start there, because what is self and how can self get deranged? Now, in the SPL region of the brain up here, if I have a stroke to that part of the brain, the SPL, I might say that my left hand that is now paralyzed belongs to you. So I lose ownership of that hand. That's very common. So mind you, this person is perfectly lucid, eloquent. You sit down with him, play chess with him. Everything is normal, but you tell him, who does this hand belong to? And he'll say, it belongs to you. So he develops this delusion. Or in some cases, the doctor might say, lift your hand, raise it, and they will try to raise it. They can't obviously, but then they will say, oh, doctor, it is an inch from your nose, doctor. So they will lie. They will confabulate. Are you waving it? Yes, doctor, it's waving right now. It's waving at you. It's fine. It's not paralyzed. Okay. So they have these bizarre delusions of selfhood. There's a case of Oliver Sacks. We looked up Oliver Sacks last time. He has a great case study of him. He's at a hospital and there's a patient of his, and the patient is lying in bed, and he keeps throwing down this his own leg. He keeps throwing it down, and he keeps pushing it inside. And he calls the nurse and says, "There's this hairy thing," to the nurse. This hairy thing on my body. It's attached to me. It won't go away. What's happening? And the nurse is saying, what are you talking about? It's your leg. And he's completely adamant that there's something attached to him that is not his. And this always happens on the left side of the body. So it's the left leg or left arm. Why? Because we build a sense of a body image in these right parietal structures up here. That's where we build a sense of a self. So you see that this can lead to these strange delusions of self. Let me give you yet another example that's even more bizarre. There are people out there that have healthy limbs. They have healthy limbs, nothing is wrong with them, but for some reason they want to amputate their healthy limb. Mind you, it's perfectly healthy. In all respects, there's nothing wrong with the limb. They scan it, but the person keeps saying, this arm doesn't belong to me. It's not my arm. And this could be any person. It could be the director of your bank. It could be your school principal. It could be your father. It could be Uncle Joe, cashier, anybody. But they have this strange delusion that their arm does not belong to them. Then Julian might say, what's going on in the brain? What's happening? When you look at the brain and you scan their brains, and this has been done, you look at the somatosensory region, first of all, to see if the sensory information is coming to the arm. We talked about the sensory map. When you touch it, that part of the brain should light up. And lo and behold, it does. You touch it, it dances with activity. Fine. Next, you go back in the brain to the SPL regions, where you construct a sense of a body image, but in a more abstract sense of a self. When you look there, the arm is missing. There's a lack of representation of that arm in your body image. So that explains why they want to cut it off. Each of us, you, me, Joey, all of us have a body image, a neurologically scaffolded body image, a sense of a self with certain boundaries drawn into our brains, burned into the circuitry, and that will dictate what you feel like is your body. And if an arm is missing in that template, you will literally go and say, oh, my arm does not belong to me, it belongs to somebody else. In this case, they will say, I want to amputate that arm, it's not a part of me. Does this make sense, by the way?
Yeah, it does. I'm thinking of like extreme examples in my head, but like, I don't know if this is like a similar idea, but remember that lady Rachel Dolezal?
No.
She was like 100% white, but then she started dressing like she was black and convinced herself that she was black, and then told everyone she was black, and then was in charge of like an NAACP chapter, and then it all came out. Is that because like in her head she was like, no, I am black?
There's something similar going on with that, but in this case, it's definitely body image specific. It's specific to the sense of body image. And what's really interesting then, many of these folks go out and have the arm amputated. What do you think happened? Do they feel happy after the amputation, or do they regret?
Not happy, I'm gonna guess.
They actually feel thrilled.
They do?
They do. It's totally...
Even after what, like they don't like come to, like, oh shit, that was a bad idea.
That would be the normal reaction, right? And that's what you see in many cases, like of similar situations. But in this case, absolutely thrilled. They are excited. They're happy. The arm is no longer a part of me. I feel good. Now there's an even more bizarre twist to this whole saga here. These guys, coming back to our initial discussion about attraction, they tend to be attracted to people who are missing that limb that they want to have amputated. Okay, so imagine BALAND over here, sitting here. He wants to amputate his left arm. You with me?
I'm with you.
Okay, I want to amputate my left arm, and that is because the left arm is missing in the SPL, in that body image. Now, if you have a girl over there, and her left arm is actually amputated, corresponding to the arm that you want to amputate, you will find her extremely attractive. In fact, if you have her duplicate, a copy of her with the full body, you'll say, nah, I'll go for the one with the amputation.
It's like you complete me by missing some parts.
Exactly. And the question is why? What's going on? We think, and this is a theory that is proposed, that the SPL, the body image part of the brain, is hooked up to the visual part of the brain and the emotional core and the dopaminergic centers, explaining and dictating the human attraction to the human form. Why does BALAND find the human form attractive overall? Why am I not attracted? Why are humans not generally attracted to a chair, a table?
I could find you a few, but yeah.
There are some weirdos out there, but you get what I'm saying.
100%.
On the savannah, the human brain doesn't want to have any ambiguity. It wants to be fast at zooming in on that potential mate, that human shape, unambiguously behind the tree, behind the bushes, and so it wants a shortcut, a circuit for saying, oh, this is a human body, find it attractive. Right?
Now let's get weird.
Yeah? But does it make sense?
It makes sense.
It makes
but
sense.
Let's get weird.
Go ahead.
What about when we're living in a world where the physical form looks human, but you know it's AI? You know it's a robot.
But I think that's exactly why robots are very tricky. That's why they can trick us, because they look like us, they speak like us, they have potential emotions, or not emotions, but they can mimic emotions extremely wide, like in a very subtle way. That's hard for us to discern and like know that this is a human versus a robot. I always use the Terminator as an example. You know, that look at the Terminator. I mean, at the very end, did we talk about the last scene before? I don't know, sure we did.
No, we didn't.
But in the last scene, have you seen him when he's kind of like, he's blown to pieces? This is the very, very end. He's about to raise himself down the steel, down into the lava thing, right? Mm-hmm. He, first of all, Arnold has a sense of humor. So he says, like with one eye that's red and like his face is blown off and arm is missing, he says, I need a vacation. This is the first thing he says. This is interesting. And then he goes over to the very edge with Sarah Connor and John Connor, and he says, John, I need to go away. I need to go because there's an extra chip up here that needs to go into that needs to be destroyed so that humanity cannot create AI and Skynet and all that. And Matt, of course, John Connor says, I order you not to go. I order you not to go. Stay. Right? I order you not to go. But then he says, then the Terminator says, he says, as John is hugging him and saying goodbye, he says, and John is crying. And the Terminator says, looks at him and says, now I know why you cry. It is something I can never do. Okay? He's having a very clear understanding what human emotion is all about.
Yes. Human
emotion is something that we feel, although he will never be able to feel it because he doesn't have an emotional brain. He doesn't have a limbic structure. So he cannot understand. He can never feel emotion, but he can understand it. And it could feel very real, right? And then eventually, of course, he kills himself. He goes down into the steel there and into the lava.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert, right? For those who didn't see it. Point of all this is that AI, machines, robots, will use what's called the DLPFC out here, the outer layers of the brain. They will use that for computation and trying to understand human emotions as well as possible. In other words, they will gauge what is human emotion all about. This is human emotions. This is how humans react in these scenarios. ABC, da. But there's no actual feeling, because to have a feeling, you have to have a medial prefrontal cortex, the middle of the prefrontal, and its communication to the amygdala and the emotional core. There's a wire that goes to the emotional core. John Connor has that. That's why he cries and feels emotions. The Terminator, the AI robots do not have that. In fact, psychopaths The medial prefrontal cortex, completely shut off. There's no activity there. That's why they have no emotions. The limbic amygdala, completely shut off. Completely like the Terminator. Psychopaths are human Terminators in that regard. They are AIs, robots. They are calculated. They use their utilitarian DLPFC out here, this part of the brain. And so that's really the key. That's the difference between AI, psychopaths, and then human, the rest of us.
Are psychopaths born, molded, or both?
Interesting question. So you have psychopaths on one hand, which are people that have no emotion, completely flat emotionally. These are the guys that can sit at a church baptizing their niece or nephew while they are carrying out multiple murders.
Michael Corleone.
Or they can have spaghetti with their mother while a dead man is, or near dead man is in the trunk, trying to get out of the trunk.
Goodfellas. This
is the psychopath. No emotion. They're being chased by the police. Their heart rate doesn't go up. The heartbeat is just completely flat. You measure their sweating, nothing. Completely flat. There's no emotion. This is a psychopath. Born this way. Born this way. You look at genes for serotonin, abnormalities, all kinds of abnormalities. This is a psychopath. Tons of psychopaths, by the way, in politics and business.
You don't say.
Yeah, it's a very adaptive trait in certain professions.
An adaptive trait.
Yes, if you can be a calculated, completely rigid athlete who does everything that has to happen on time, you don't have emotion to interfere. Your mother's illness, your wife's agony won't interfere with how you perform, and you can be a top athlete. Though I think the true athletes out there, the great ones, have heart. The Messis of the world, the Maradonas of the world, the Pelés, they have heart. The greatness. You can be the perfect, athlete otherwise, but the true greats, they do have heart. They're blessed with something that can be captured, and they don't have the psychopathy like tendencies. But this is what a psychopath is all about. Psychopath is completely utilitarian, calculated. Let me give you an example. Something called the trolley problem. You know it. Should I mention it?
Please mention it, yes.
Okay. All right. So there's two tracks. On one track, there's one person. On another track, there's 5 persons, right? A train is going fast towards the 5 people, about to kill them. You're on a bridge. You can see all that. You can flip a switch, and the train will then go to and change its direction and go to the track and kill one person instead of the 5 people. You ask most people this question, they will say unambiguously, they will just do it. I'll switch the flip and I'll save that one person. Okay, everybody says I'll do that, right? Then there's a version of this where there's on the bridge, there's a heavy guy, a chubby guy. He's in front of you. And as the train is coming beneath the bridge, and it's about to kill 5 people now, so it's not going towards one, it's going towards the 5 people, if you're with me. If he pushes this guy over, he will fall down on the tracks, and he will die, but he will save the 5 people from dying. Now, if you ask people, if you have to ask Joey, you have to ask any person out there that's fairly normal, they will say, no, I will not do it. Although the scenario is the same, right? You're killing one person and saving the 5. But in this case, people won't do it. And then you might ask, why is that the case? And before I answer this question, a psychopath, by the way, would have no issues pushing that guy over. He will say, I will push him over. And the reason is the following. In a normal, healthy person like you and I, we consult our emotions. We consult the amygdala, we consult the insula, as I talked about before, our bodily states. We consult all these brain regions, emotional core, and then the medial prefrontal cortex says, I just can't push this guy over. I cannot physically push him over and kill him. It's just too much. A psychopath doesn't have these parts of the brain. He uses the utilitarian DLPFC again up here. And so for him, it's very easy just to throw him over and push him over.
It's kind of, it reminds me of that scene in The Dark Knight where the Joker sends the 2 boats off Gotham City Island, and one boat is filled with pretty much all the criminals,
Yes.
and the other boat is filled with all the citizens. And they each hold a trigger to blow up each other's boats.
Yes.
And he's expecting that he says you got 15 minutes or you all die.
Yep.
And he's expecting people in the trolley problem of life, regardless of whether it's the criminals or the so-called normal people, non-criminals of society, he's expecting them to push the fat man over. The criminals viewing the fat man as anyone else who's not them.
Yes.
The non-criminals viewing it as, oh, they're the criminals. They already made their choice. But neither boat does it because they're unwilling to break a moral boundary to save themselves.
100%. So this is a feature of the human brain. When we make decision making, are we making decisions using the DLPFC, or are we, the psychopath part of the brain, or I just say the logical part of the brain? Or are we using the medial prefrontal, which is a bridge between emotion and higher cognitive thinking? And this can be shown in other scenarios too. For example, if I was to say, Julian, do you want $100 now or $110 a week from now? Most people would say to this, they will say, I want $100 now. There's something special about the here and now, right? Something. If I ask the same question, but I say, would you want $100 52 weeks from now or $110 53 weeks from now? Then it changes. They say, give me the 110 53 weeks from now. Okay. The point is,
goalposts. In
the latter scenario, when it's not about here and now, you use the DLPFC, utilitarian. But when it's here and now and something you can have a reward now, you use the medial prefrontal cortex. So I think basically understanding this basic difference between the medial prefrontal cortex, what it does, how it's important for decision making, can enrich our lives. We should make more decisions using the medial prefrontal cortex. We should consult our emotions for the right decisions. We shouldn't run to ChatGPT and ask, how do I deal with this problem? How do I deal with this social conflict? Because it is the psychopath. That is, you are dealing with a psychopath when you're dealing with ChatGPT and these kind of. And
you're saying
AI.
Genetically, a lot of them are pre-wired for that. But do you also think that someone can be genetically not pre-wired for it, and then they're, you don't choose where you're born. They're born into an environment that just completely molds them to be that way?
Yeah.
Come over at this.
This is what, yes, this is true. This can happen. This is known as a sociopath. So that's the difference between a sociopath and a psychopath. But a sociopath, by the way, is somebody who does have some emotion, but through exposure, being in a tough neighborhood, just maybe being beaten as a child, having a lot of these bonding hormones kicked out of you almost. So you've learned that the world is dangerous, that you have to be callous, and literally it has epigenetic markers, all the traumatic stuff that you witnessed as a child, alcoholic parents perhaps. And that can also shape you into a sociopath. But a sociopath would always have a little bit of emotion, a little bit of regret, a little bit of guilt. There's something there that's not completely absent. The psychopath is just no regret. Yeah. Okay. A psychopath will do the following. If you break up with a psychopath, like a Stung type scenario, okay, somebody who sees a woman as a trophy, if you break up with that guy, you know what he will do? He might plan to get back to you by being romantic. So he'd be very romantic, get back to you. And then he'll wait a year, make sure that she falls completely in love with him, and then just break up with him just to say, oh, this was all a ploy. I did this just to get back to you for insulting me and breaking up with me. This is a psychopath, calculated. No empathy whatsoever. Zero empathy. Yeah.
Yeah, that was something I remember when I was younger, there was someone who I actually really like a lot who was giving me some theories on how to go get your goals and stuff. And we had the definition of a psychopath so wrong, because we're oh, you could use it in a positive way because you're just so driven to do what you want to do. In reality, it's actually in many cases even worse, like you're pointing out, than a sociopath, because a sociopath can actually have the environment mold them into being that, not to excuse being a sociopath, but you know what I mean? Like it's wild how much someone could just be born with that kind of tendency. And,
Yep.
we use it. I'm guilty of it. We use it in parlance. Like, I'm a psychopath to go get my goals and whatever. But in reality, like the root of the word itself and what it really is supposed to mean is entirely different in not a good way.
Yeah, a real winner is somebody who...
I'm trying to get you, by the way, Balan, I'm trying to get you over here just because like you're fading into Maximus behind you. So come this way a little bit and come into the table.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just looking at your mark and your hat's like blending in with the background. That's better. That's
Grab a little bit more water.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We'll grab that.
Okay.
Keep going though.
A real winner in life, I think, is somebody who can have the discipline, keep going. Things get tough. They may have a death in the family, or they may experience hardship. They lose sleep over it, but they keep going.
Yes.
That fight between the emotional brain and the prefrontal cortex is definitely there. And they're suffering because of that, seeing their ill father or something. But they keep going. They keep going for it and don't give up. And they have that discipline, regardless of how many tears and how many things that they have to hold back in order to complete the work in front of them. That for me is a real winner, not somebody who's completely cold and has no emotions whatsoever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be an awful way to go through life too, where you don't feel anything. You don't get the chance to. You also don't get the chance to empathize with how other people are feeling in a good or bad direction to learn from that, regardless of what direction it's in. You know what I mean? Like there's something about, you never like to see someone around you sad or really down or something like that. It's not a good feeling to see that at all. But there's something that can be learned from that afterwards that also then magnifies the beauty of life, right? And magnifies the good things.
Yeah, yeah. Empathy is an interesting one. So empathy is crucial. There's two types of empathy, by the way. There's cognitive and affective empathy. Cognitive empathy, psychopaths have tons of it. You use the outer layer of the brain, as you can mention, and you know what somebody else is thinking. You know what their mind is up to. You have access to their minds almost. Like okay, this person is thinking this and that, and you have access to that. That's the cognitive empathy. Then there's affective empathy. That's the type of empathy where you feel what they're feeling. You have emotional connectedness with them. Did we talk about this last time? I can't remember.
A little bit.
Okay.
Go ahead.
It's
That's
coming.
right.
Okay, good. So I just want to make sure we got that. Okay, good. So go back and listen to that. But my point is, we have these two subsystems of empathy. But empathy is crucial, and empathy can sometimes override even cognitive barriers. So we did some experiments back in the day. I don't think we talked about this last time. I should tell you. So we have somebody over there. He's standing over there. He touches a contaminant. Let's say fake vomit. This is what Mashandra and I doing.
Oh, is this the OCD experiment?
Did we talk about this?
Yeah, we did talk about this.
Okay, so they can go back and listen to it. My point is that empathy is a crucial part of our well-being. And now I'm completely off rail of what I want to talk about because I was planning to go down the OCD stuff.
No, it's all good. So I got plenty of other ideas to go with.
I think, okay, so if we want to take a big view of the brain and how self comes about, because we started with the self and I wanted to touch upon the self. Self is the following. To me, self is this. Self is the prefrontal lobes. We engage in mental time travel, a sense of BALAND, sense of Julian through time. I was a child. I grew up in this ghetto, Copenhagen, refugee child, came to Denmark, came to the States, and so forth. Prefrontal cortex, building a sense of self.
Yes.
Then we talked about the insula and mapping your bodily states. That's also part of the sense of self. Then you have the hippocampus, the memory part of the brain, all your memories, part of the self as well. Then you have the superior parietal lobule, those regions involved in a sense of body image and my body belongs to me. That also helps you create a sense of self, the TPJ, sensory information, and integrating all that. And I think conjointly, these circuits in the brain creates what's called the self. And from the self, then comes consciousness. You cannot talk about consciousness, a sense of a conscious being without a self. You can't have free-floating consciousness. You have to have a self that's mapped onto that consciousness and linked to that consciousness.
That's right.
So I think you have to have a self. You have to have these structures in the brain that conjointly create a self. and then you have consciousness. And then, did we talk about qualia last time?
Qualia?
Qualia?
That does sound familiar.
Sound familiar?
There were so many things.
We talked about so many things, man. But qualia is an interesting one. Okay, we didn't talk about this. This is you need the following for a sense of consciousness. This is interesting. Okay, now, if I am a, let's say I am a, there's a super scientist here from the future. He's here. He's mapping my brain. He's looking at my brain, and he says, I can see all the cascades of chemicals and all the neural firings in your brain as you're about to choose between two football players and choose which you like the best, Messi or Cristiano. Mm-hmm. Okay? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Now, he can look at my brain, and by looking at my brain, he will know even before I make the decision, he will know that I'll choose Messi.
Right.
Okay? He'll know that. And then I might be mischievous and say, look, scientist, before I choose Messi or Cristiano, show it to me on a piece of paper. And the scientist will do that. He will show it to you. And at this point, you choose the other one. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And when you do that, you defy him.
Yes.
Does that make sense? My point of this thought experiment is free will and consciousness and free will. Do we have free will or do we not have free will? And there's a lot of debate about free will.
Yeah.
And whether we have free will. I don't think we talked about this.
This is actually I'm glad you're bringing it up. I wanted to talk about this more, but we couldn't dig into it. We didn't have enough time. What you were saying is that you were defining the three different ways that we can try to basically like measure for free will or something like that. And then also what you were saying is that this is where I brought it up earlier, where the idea came from, where you're talking about we can't totally measure time and space with consciousness in the brain such that it's hard to say whether it goes one way or another with free will. Did I say that
We talked about, so free will is an interesting part. So see, this is when sleep deprivation then starts to mess me up.
You're doing great.
I get consciousness and free will wrong. But no, do we have free will as human? This is the question, right? Mm-hmm. Do we have free will? And in order to have consciousness, you need to have a free will, arguably, although many scientists don't believe in free will. Did you know this?
I've heard some scientists say it's not real. I didn't know. I don't know if I would use the word many, but I'd trust you to use the word a lot more than me. You're in the space.
Most scientists would actually say, most neuroscientists would say we have no free will.
On what basis?
They would literally say, they would point to things like the experiment I talked about last time where if you can actually know, you can look at your brain and measure the brain, and even before a person consciously chooses to move his hand, the brain will pick that up. They will use that perhaps, and then they will look at all kinds of genetics, epigenetics, environment, and say, look, every decision you made before you went into that bank and you shot that person was all driven by your neurochemistry, how much sleep you had last night, and then the person just was in the, he was there, but then all that chemistry, genetics, epigenetics, environment, brain circuitry inherited from the parents, and all that just led up to that moment, and pop, you killed him. So you have no free will. So that's one view. What I was trying to illustrate with this thought experiment is that even if you have access to the brain circuitry and activation before he makes a conscious choice, it seems like you can always defy that at the very end. That was my point. So if you do have a choice between A and B at the very end, if somebody shows you the answer, for example, you can choose to go the other way, or you can choose not to go the other way, and it becomes the infinite loop. Do we have a sense of conscious awareness, free will, and can we choose our own path? And I do think we do have veto power to ultimately make our own decision.
I do too. I don't think we're just some controlled robot ant in an experiment from an overlord to actually do the things that we command it to do, like it's a fucking Sims game.
I think so.
And part of that might be my bias to not wanting life to be meaningless, because it would feel pretty meaningless if we knew otherwise. But I do think some things could be like pre-programmed to not necessarily happen, but to create a cause and effect. Like if certain people are born as a psychopath, they are pre-programmed to create some sort of chaos in society that will then have a butterfly effect on many other people. Now, what that butterfly effect causes, if the wave moves this way or that way and causes this thing or that thing, I think that's where free will comes into it. And I think that if we didn't have free will, we wouldn't have such an understanding of the good and the bad on so many things. Obviously, there's gray area with stuff, and you know, you can have the conversation about what is all good or what is all bad, and we have many times in different contexts on this podcast. But you know, there is the light and the darkness that exists overall, where people can see like or you know, and if that makes sense. And so I do think free will plays a role in that, and I also think, you know, you are the dreams expert. We haven't talked a ton about dreams today, but you know, we did get into dreams a lot last time, and there's much more to go to. You spent so much of your life on it, but I think that the way our consciousness can behave, like in a format like that, where we fall asleep and then this uncontrollable thing happens where we start to inject what's real, what's fake, and create these stories in our mind that's almost like attached to a separate universe while our body is resting and physically rebuilding itself. I think that things like that actually prove free will. I don't think that that's like, you know, some uploaded software that's injected into you. It's far too creative. It's far too complex. You know, I guess the counter argument could be, well, what is creative or complex to an entity that's all knowing, that's way above you doing it to you? I guess that's possible, but there's such clear beauty and chaos in the world that it just wouldn't make sense to me as a human here on Earth that free will would not be a thing.
100%. I think for consciousness, you have to have some kind of free will, and you have to have some kind of at least flexible output. So what do I mean? You look at a bee, for example, and it's dancing. It does its wiggle dance when it's signaling to the other bees where the hive is and all that. It looks very complicated and complex. But would most people say a bee is conscious? No. Why wouldn't they say a bee is conscious? They would say a bee has no flexible output. It has one singular algorithm, and it will only do this all the time. So it's not conscious, in fact. But a human being, on the other hand, it has a choice. It can make that Cola versus Pepsi or Messi versus Ronaldo question and choose one. So we have flexible output. That's what makes us conscious. Another example would be, let's take the dream world, as you were talking about. You want to talk about sleep world? Let's talk about that as an example. During sleep paralysis, are you conscious versus are you conscious during sleepwalking? So some people during deep sleep can wake up, jolt awake. In fact, they jolt awake, but only so much so that they can start walking around in their house. They go around, they start maybe their car and start driving. This is well known. On the freeway, they go, eyes are wide open, but they're deeply asleep. This is called sleepwalking. Now, if you stop that sleepwalker and say, look, Joe, Cristiano or Messi, Pepsi or Cola, Paris or London, they will not be able to choose. Why? The prefrontal is shut down, so they have no sense of agency and they have no sense of flexible output. That person is not conscious. We can be clear on that definition. It's like a bee or like any kind of like primitive animal with no consciousness. So that we can be clear on the definition here. This is not a conscious agent. But during sleep paralysis, in fact, the person is conscious, because if I was to communicate with this person that's paralyzed and is aware of his surroundings, and if I could communicate with him, and in fact I can using his eyes because the eyes can move, I could actually ask him, who do you prefer, Pele or Maradona? And he could move his eyes two to the left, that would mean Pele, or one to the right could be Maradona. So that would be an example of consciousness. So definitions are important, and I think having flexible output, being able to choose between A and B and C, of course, this would be an example of why consciousness and what consciousness is and what is conscious and what is not conscious. So I think that is important.
I think it's going to get really weird though for humanity in general when we actually can read each other's minds. and stuff like that. I think that could totally change the way people respond to even experiments like this, because you are conscious of the fact that other people are in your head all the time. I mean, I'm not trying to get too dystopian, but as a neuroscientist who's looking at all the trends and, science behind the brave new world we're entering, how close are we to, whether it be Neuralink or whoever's going to do it, setting up a world where we are literally all in each other's heads all the time?
Reading mind is difficult. Difficult. I would say what Neuralink are doing with moving a screen with the brain and things like that, that's actually not too difficult, because you have planning and motor regions of the brain, and so you could easily hook that up with an algorithm to move a cursor on a screen and things like that. To gauge what somebody else is thinking is a completely different business. I think that one tantalizing finding is in the dream world. So you actually have studies creating movies of people's dreams.
Creating movies of people's dreams.
Images. Creating images of what people is dreaming. So this is one way to have access to somebody else's brain. Now, it's very premature. It's very early days.
Wait. It's something you plug into them that creates the imagery?
Let me tell you. So what they do.
Oh my God.
So what they'll do is that they will have people lying in a scanner and show them images of a car, of a house, of a chair, and so forth. So they have those images and they keep them. Then they show them the same items as they are awake. Car, chair, so forth. So they scan their brain, they have those images. Then they dream, and then when they dream and they ask them to report, and then they scan their brain as they're dreaming, and they report down, in this dream I saw a car, I saw a house, I saw da-da-da-da-da, and they write that down, and they have the images as well. Then they put all that into the AI machine learning, create an algorithm, and then when they're dreaming, and the brain is scanning their brain, once they hit and they dream on that house they were talking about, based on the images they saw, they can then feed the computer, and they will start seeing a house, maybe a person walking, and so forth. So this is new stuff. Very few subjects. I think it's from Japan, but it shows that it's getting to the early days of being able to spit out somebody's dream and putting it on a screen.
So we're going beyond just mind reading of basic conscious communication. We're going to mind reading fucking dreams.
Yes, it started with just being able to say what a person is dreaming about. So they were able to say, okay, this person is dreaming about a car, but based on these photos, they can take their photos when they're looking at photos and scanning their brains and so forth. They were able to say a person is dreaming about a car, a house, and so and like a chair and so on. They didn't have the specificity of saying, this is a Ferrari versus a Honda. They didn't know that, but they just knew it was a car. But now it's gone too far as far as they can put it on a screen and have some of those images pop up. But of course, it's not what the person is actually dreaming about, the original one, but it's a proxy of that. Who knows what happens in 50 years, 100 years? They probably may have very vivid, lifelike images of your dreams on a screen.
Oh my God, it's getting crazy out here.
It is.
One of the things I really enjoyed about our conversation last time is how much you're also a student of history with things. And I didn't really get to ask you the history of dreams and how that's been reflected into our reality, and to put that in English. There's so many ancient texts and stories that are told. Some are clearly more philosophical rather than literal. Others seem like they could be literal. But, is it possible that things like, here's a good example. Is it possible that something like Moses with the burning bush could just be the reflection of not even Moses' dream, but someone else's dream that was just so warped with reality in a way that they actually thought it was real?
Could that be the case? It's hard to say, right? The burning bush and all that. What happened, and was it somebody else's dream? What happened? It's hard to say. I can't answer that. But I don't know. But looking at the history of dreams, there's definitely there's an interesting unfolding of patterns. And so initially, the people would look at symbols and symbolize dreams and see them as messages from the God. We talked about Joseph and Joseph's dream from the Bible, and the Quran and what he saw. Then later came along Sigmund Freud and said, no, in fact, dreams are the unconscious mind. You have something called the latent and the manifest content. The latent content is all the symbols you're seeing jumping around in your brain. So you're seeing yourself on the moon having tea with the queen. Everything is spacey, time, places, people, everything is warped. Your brain cannot tackle these anxiety-inducing objects head-on, so it creates a symbol. And if you were to see them as a manifest content, as they actually were, you would be jolted awake. So your brain uses these symbols. This is Freud's idea, and then you would have the person, when he's awake, analyze his dreams, decode them, and then by then remove the neurosis, the anxiety, and then in that way heal him. In many ways, Freud, I'm not a Freudian, in fact, I don't like Freud very much, but he was ahead of his time when it comes to dreams, like knowing it's the unconscious and there's something going on beyond just divine messages. The brain is definitely involved, as we talked about at length last time. After that came along other scientists, and then looking at the brain and knowing that the brain is involved and various parts of the brain turn on and off when we are dreaming. And so that's kind of roughly the history of dreams, if that makes sense.
When did what's the earliest where humankind, people wrote down or, left some history of dreams where they clearly defined it as the fact that it was a dream and that, it was just when you were asleep, this is what they thought of.
Interesting. So it wasn't like divine messages and all that?
Right.
I don't know. I don't know exactly when the first time might have been. I'm inclined towards Freud in the sense of in a major way that shifted society.
In a studious way.
Yeah, in a major societal way where he actually made had a treatise and had an actual argument. But there may have been other people before him that might have mentioned that, but they might have been burned at the stake or something for not following the paradigm of the time and the time the thought of the time. So
I think one of the many things Freud talks about was the dreams of the unconscious mind also reflect our attractions and stuff like that well, right?
Yeah,
so what we dream is that. Do we dream about people we're attracted to that we may not even know we're attracted to, or that might feel attracted to us and we didn't know it?
It's a tricky thing here because, yes, he did say it's the royal road to the unconscious, that our unconscious mind is really bubbling away inside the dream, and that is what we are seeing, that it's our things that are beneath the surface, right? He did say that. Mm-hmm. But is that the whole story? So when I see myself attracted to that girl at work, does it mean that I'm actually attracted to her and I'm trying to inhibit that? I don't think that's true necessarily. Because dreams don't follow in a completely logical pattern. There may be some aspects of her you are attracted to, but people will actually see themselves being sexually engaged with family members, incest scenarios, or pedophilia or same sex. There's all kinds of bizarre things in dreams people will talk about.
That aren't reflective of how they feel.
No, not whatsoever. Mm. So you can think of the instinctual brain being amygdala and the emotional part of the brain being 30% more active, and the prefrontal cortex shutting down. And then you just have this messiness of concepts created in your mind where you cannot make sense of who is person A, why am I attracted? Is this somebody else I'm attracted to? Maybe this is a beautiful woman's body, but the head of somebody else, and things you cannot, like, going into the realm of dreams is going down the rabbit hole. So trying to analyze that and say, look, no, I'm attracted to this person over here, and that's why I'm dreaming about them, I think it can be dangerous. It can be very dangerous.
What's the difference between a dream mm-hmm. and an illusion?
Illusion. Okay, in dreams, there are several components to a dreams. In dreams, you are delusional. You have false beliefs. You think that you may be a Superman and that you are living in a palace. So this is called a delusion. So you have delusions when you're dreaming. You have amnesia, so you forget your dream. There's amnesia. Mm-hmm. You have hallucinations as well, meaning you have you have perceptual view, you have percepts that are not true. These are hallucinations. These are not happening in real life. You're not actually you're not flying in real life. You have hallucinations. And then you're temporarily psychotic as well. You have strange and bizarre scenarios unfolding. An illusion, on the other hand, is something I see in real life that is not actually the case. So that's an illusion.
Mm-hmm.
I have an illusion of something. It's a false belief, but it's not a delusion. But it's a belief I have of something that turns out not to be the case. Maybe we can look it up, the actual definition, but and delusion is obviously pathological.
Definition of illusion or delusion?
An illusion could be a visual illusion, something that is...
The definition of illusion is a thing that is or is likely to be wrongly perceived or interpreted by the senses.
Correct. So this would be an illusion. Yeah.
Okay.
And whereas a delusion would be a false belief.
The reason I'm asking, because like in some ways it seems like an obvious answer to me. One is like when you're asleep. The other one is just when you see something wrong. But like I'm wondering, the reason I asked the question, like what's the difference between a dream and an illusion, is because we almost have like the safety net in my mind of just accepting the fact that, well, a dream is really happening when you're asleep, meaning in a different state. But is it acted like when we see an illusion, are we having the same, this is not the term for it, but like psychedelic aspects of the brain being activated that happen in a dream, but because we're awake, we just differentiate it when we really shouldn't at all, because when we're asleep, we're still the same person with the same brain. See what I'm saying?
No, say that again. Sorry, I
yeah,
blanked out.
that got a little convoluted at the end. When we're asleep, it's almost like we are viewing ourselves as like different. We're not the same person because we're not here. We're not conscious at the moment. Whereas when we're awake, I'm Julian. I'm looking at this camera right now. I'm trying to figure out whatever I'm trying to figure out. I'm here in the moment. I'm present.
Yes.
So with an illusion, we may look at it and we know, like right now, we're present and we're actually looking at this illusion. Whereas with a dream, we're asleep and we forget where we are.
Yes.
But in reality, the aspects of the brain that tie into both, meaning like that make us notice that this is an illusion, or make us notice that this is a dream, are still being activated regardless of what state we're in, sleep or awake.
Well, it actually shuts down when we're asleep. So the part of the brain that can differentiate between real and false shuts down. And that's why everything in the dream feels so real. That's why when you see that monster or you see that girl or you have that conversation, it feels very real. Sense of self-agency shuts down. And in fact, that's very adaptive. Why? Having a dream where you are running from an alligator, jumping over that stone, jumping into that river, removing that tree, what you're doing right there, you are crystallizing circuits in the brain that can help you survive better, help you survive much better, and you are dress rehearsing for real life inside the dream, if that makes sense.
Yes.
You make a dress rehearsal for real life in that dream. It's like virtual reality, crystallizing the circuit, making you more inept and more being able to more powerfully deal with that in real life by having the circuitry laid out in the brain. So this is really what the dream is all about. And then having that extra layer in the brain, when sense of self-agency goes away, that's really powerful because it makes it much more immersive. It feels much more real. So that is what a dream is all about. It's being in this scientific testing lab with no fatal consequences. And you do not know it's a testing lab, so it feels much more immersive and real, if that makes sense.
Right.
And so that's what a dream is all about.
Yeah, I was struggling it's a very difficult question for me to ask. It's one of those where like I know in my head what I'm trying to say, but getting into words, people are probably like, what the fuck did he just ask right there?
Yeah.
But the reason I was like trying to get it, the illusion part is because like if I look at an image where you'll see these on social media where they say, look at this in the middle for 10 seconds and it's going to move.
Yeah.
You suddenly see it moving.
Yes.
you know it's not moving, but you're suspended in belief in that moment that you're like, holy shit, it's moving, and you kind of can't tell the difference between the two. So
Yes.
to me, when you talk about dreams like being a suspension from reality,
Yes.
I think there's my non-academic opinion, I think there's a similar thing that's happening when you are caught in the moment of being faced with this thing that is being told to you that it's an illusion, but you actually then believe like, oh shit, it really is moving. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, no, look, the brain, obviously what it does is it fills in the blanks all the time and creates, it fills in perceptual holes all the time. An example would be, for example, let's say, I talked about last time how you have conceptual parts of the brain, how when you look at an image, you can look at it from a conceptual point of view initially, or you can look at it from an actual sensory point of view. So, and these two blend, and then your brain makes up a decision based on both conceptual, hippocampus, Wernicke's area, these meaning parts of the brain, and the actual sensory raw data, and then makes up, oh, this is a table, this is this is that. And then if you have damage, let's say to the eye, it will fill in the blanks, and it will give you all kinds of inputs and say the world looks like this, it looks like that. And the reason it does this, you have this syndrome, and that is because viewing the world is a controlled hallucination. The world is not actually, the world I'm seeing out there is not the actual world. It is a constructed world. It's a controlled hallucination. It's my conceptual brain, my memory centers, chit-chatting with my actually sensory centers and saying, oh, this is probably the world out there. It's making a prediction about the world. So in other words, at any given moment, you can see the world in various ways. Let me give you an example. You know the Dalmatian dog? It kind of has splotches. Initially, you won't know it's a Dalmatian dog. Maybe you can look it up here. But it's like it's like splashes, maybe not. But it has like splashes, and then you see it, and it becomes a dog all of a sudden. Have you seen that?
I don't think I'm familiar with this.
So, Dalmatian dog splashes. Illusion.
Dalmatian dog splashes illusion. Yeah. Oh, yes. Okay. So you're talking about where it's like, there's other illusions like this where it's like, do you see a shape? Oh, now you see a dog.
And there's a perceptual click.
Yes.
Yeah. This would be an example. There's other, what's called bistable illusion. So you look at a woman's face. At one point, it looks like an old lady, or it looks like a beautiful young chick. So it kind of flips. And that's, again, your brain can conceptually drive this, and then once you can't see both. Either you see one or the other, showing you how seeing is very conceptually driven. It's driven by our conceptual views of the world.
I'm getting way outside my bounds right here, but I'm trying to tie some of this together to like time and space and how it's odd. If you look at the movie Interstellar, which Kip Thorne advised on, and it got a lot of things, according to many scientists, like conceptually solid. I think there's some scientists who are like, well, this couldn't happen or that couldn't happen, but there were a lot of concepts that they seem to do a great job with. The idea that they enter this, Matthew McConaughey and the team enter this black hole, and then on the other side of the black hole go to these planets, such that when they physically go onto the planets, time is changed to 20 years per every hour or whatever it was, something like that back home.
Right.
Meaning that when they're done this mission where they didn't age very much, they go home and Earth has aged 100 years or something like that. Is there a concept in them entering that black hole and then coming out on the other side onto the planets to where, how do I want to, this is so hard to ask, to where their consciousness has been suspended such that it seems that time has not passed, but time really did pass to them. But on Earth, no consciousness was suspended, so time passed and the aging process took place in a way that it doesn't take place for McConaughey and his team on the other side of the black hole.
It's a great question.
Thank God.
It's hard to say exactly from the perspective of that movie. It's very hard to say how that would map. But consciousness, time can't stand still in your brain. This is actually clear-cut example of this. This is a man called HM, and his hippocampus region, he had his hippocampi, the two memories structures in the brain, jelly roll structures behind the ears. You have two of them on each side, and they help you take short-term memory and store it in a long-term vault in the cortex, the outer layer of the brain. Now, this poor chap, back in the day, he had both his hippocampi removed. So he has no hippocampus. So he's basically staying in the realm of like 1 or 2 minutes all the time, and then he forgets everything else. So every time his wife appears, it's like seeing her for the first time in 30 years. They have a conversation, and he has forgotten everything. 2 minutes has gone. She comes back, and he's happy again for seeing her. And so you could sit there and you could tell him the same joke over and over, and he will just laugh, find it funny. He will find his wife attractive each time as if the first time he saw her. And you can introduce yourself to him the whole evening, and he will forget you after 2 minutes, and you have to reintroduce yourself. So this is an example of being stuck in time. HM, and his brain was extremely well studied. This would be an example of how consciousness can break down, how time can unravel for some people.
Yeah, that's from a short circuit perspective, though. Internally having to do with the brain organ itself.
Do you mean time perception itself? It can expand? We talked about how time can expand in dreams, for example, feel stretched out because neurons are firing more slowly in REM in rats. And that could mean that the brain time feels stretched out in dreams. I think there are some examples, for example, like when you look at an awe-striking thing, like you look at a mountain that's just beautiful. Like I was recently in California and I saw this mountain, and we have nothing like this in Copenhagen, for example. And this beautiful mountain is stunning, okay? I looked at that, and it's shown that people, when they look at awe-striking things like a mountain, a beautiful tree, time expands. It feels longer. Cortisol goes down, by the way, as well, and they become more charitable. So if you are sitting underneath a beautiful, awe-striking tree, you become more charitable, you become more helpful, you become more kinder as a person as well. And overall, time will just feel like it's stretching out. The converse scenario is when you are stressed and the amygdala is hyperactive and cortisol is through the roof and noradrenaline is through the roof. Time feels compressed. You feel like time is running out all the time. So that would be the counter example.
What you're talking about is perception of time.
Perception of time, yeah.
Is there a way that perception meets physical reality scientifically? Because that's what Interstellar was trying to say. They were talking about time dilation more than anything, but what I'm wondering is that if there's a way to determine that time dilation in what we're explaining scientifically is actually like a perception, an illusion itself, such that it feels like and then physically manifests in a way such that they don't age.
Yeah.
And they feel like they only spent a year up there or something, but they actually did spend 80, and there's something where the consciousness was suspended.
Yeah.
That like allowed them to not have that manifest physically, emotionally, or mentally.
Yeah.
It's way beyond my pay grade, but I'm curious about it.
I understand. It's a deep question, but I think in Interstellar, for example, they end up on that bizarre planet with the ice and all that. You've seen that? And I think a few minutes there corresponds to like 7-8 years.
I think it was every 20 minutes is like 7 years or something like that.
And then the poor chap is on the spaceship and he's been waiting 30 years. You've seen that?
23. Yeah.
So the question would be then, could you do something similar for consciousness? I don't think so, because what is happening, this is actually time shrinking in or expanding or whatever it might be, depending on, this is physics, right? Time, space, and if you are in a certain atmosphere and how things rotation of the planets and all that, and then time will feel different. But you will physically age too. You will, like, the brain will age, the body will age. And could something similar happen on Earth? I mean, you would need to really be something that is more physics than neuroscience here, because that would require actual aging and so forth of the body and the brain.
That's what I was thinking about a lot after our last conversation, how much your world goes right up onto the edge such that it literally goes over the cliff into physics.
Yeah.
You know, even if it's not intended to be that way, like you're a neuroscientist, you're studying an organ, the brain, and the effects it has, but then the things that you find and uncover in your various studies get right into like our physical reality.
It does. It does. I think you're right. And I think as we're moving more into the future and we build machine and we have machine brain interface and you build like, you have TMS machines that can scan the brain, and you have ultrasound that can go deep in the brain and activate neurons deep in the brain and revive dead neurons and things like that. It will be an interaction between physics and engineering and on one hand, and then brain science on the other. So I think as we move along, these specialized fields we need to cooperate a lot in order to get to, to make advances, if that makes sense.
Hell yeah. I got a million other things I want to talk with you about, but we're coming up close to 3 hours. So I think we should cut it there. We'll have to do this again.
Absolutely.
Of course, I already knew that before you came in. But there's just like, God, I could talk with guys like you all day because it just gets so fascinating. I appreciate you having patience with some of my questions too,
good
because
questions,
it's
man.
very hard to take some of these concepts especially as a non-scientist or something, and express it into words. And you're very patient with that.
Well, I love it, man. Thank you for having me. And if I was rambling a bit today, forgive me. My sleep deprivation and all that can hit you after time zones and travels and all that. This is the tail end of my travel. So I was in California California, coming back here, and then going to Copenhagen in a few hours. My bag's a little.
Oh, you're flying to Copenhagen from here? Nice.
Yeah. So.
All right.
So
well, I appreciate you fitting it in.
Yeah.
And you weren't rambling at all. Your explanations are great.
Wonderful.
There was some, we had a wide range today, but then a lot of the stuff on love and attraction, Baland's work on that is some of the greatest since Finer's.
Oh, yeah.
You ever read Finer before?
No, I haven't.
Oh, the 15-15-30 method?
Is that interesting?
You're a Harvard neuroscientist? You never read this?
No,
It's incredible stuff. I'll send you afterwards. His work
should.
in the field of love science is unprecedented. Stu Finer. But anyway,
wonderful.
Thank you so much for being here, Baland. We'll do it again, my friend.
Sounds great, brother.
All right, everyone else, you know what it is. Give it a thought. Get back to me. Peace. What's up, guys? Thanks so much for watching the video. If you have not subscribed, please hit that subscribe button before you leave, as well as leaving a like on the video. It's a huge, huge help. You can join my Patreon via the link in the description, and you can also join my clipping community via the Discord link down below. See you for the next episode.